Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Jimmy Good, and joining me, as always, is one of my go-to podcast compadres, Mr. Joseph Lever. Joseph, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine now that I see your beautiful face. No, seriously, even though I saw you before this, it's nice. It's just like old times. You know what I'm saying? Just like old times before we were all shut-ins. You remember? Do you remember those times?
Okay. Before we were shut-ins. I've always been a shut-in.
Not true.
We're finally recording during the day. I've got a bit of natural light coming in the window on me here. Look at this.
That's true. Yeah. So spoiler alert, I have blankets over my windows, which sounds really strange, but here in the cold north, in the winter, I put it on because on that part of the house that I live in, it was an add-on. And if I don't do this, it'll get even colder. So like I have to do that. So it's like always darkness, but then I get lazy sometimes and I don't take them down. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So it always looks the same, probably, for most people. There's a little light on Kylo you can see over here. You see that? Or on the stormtroopers. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about something very specific. We had some great write-ins, some great feelings, because we're talking about Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. And if you've been watching our show, even probably one episode in the past, you probably know that we love Lord of the Rings around these parts. And it's probably been a little while, especially a little bit longer for you, Joe, since you've watched Fellowship of the Ring. But we're going to get into it today. So full spoilers, all of it's on the table. Switch has been flipped. You've been warned. This movie came out almost 20 years ago. So you know what? It's on you at this point if you haven't seen it, which I was thinking about, like, Joe, as I was falling asleep last night. I'm like, holy crap. Like, this movie's been out for like almost 20 years. 20 years.
Is it that long?
It came out in 2001. I was like, oh, like, it's like, oh.
Wow.
All right. That's fine. It's okay. That's just how these things go. Time, it's just the ever-flowing river, as they used to say in the beginning of Jurassic Park River Adventure. So, Joe, I kind of want to go through this like bit by bit and kind of go through the characters, you know, the plot and all that stuff. But are there any general things you want to kind of say at the top of this? Like how you feel about how you felt going into it versus coming out of it? Like any thoughts or feelings?
Going into it, all I could think about is just show me the damn ring race. Let's get to it.
Oh, it should be about them.
Yeah. I don't know. It is interesting because you mentioned that it's almost 20 years old or about to be in like 6 months, right?
Yeah.
It came out in probably December of 2001.
Yep.
So anywho, it's still an excellent film. I guess when I went into it, I noticed I love the practicality of everything, the practical effects and whatnot. You know, I always talk about that on any movie we watch and whatnot. Star Wars, another example. But I got into it, and as I'm watching, I'm appreciating those things, but then I'm seeing other things that I'm like, wow, it's amazing how far we've come. Like that today would look so, you know, but for the most part, you can't really punch holes in any of it. It all looks really good. But if you know, I watched it with a more critical eye to really kind of like, man, I wonder if I can pick out anything, because in my mind, like these were perfection, right?
Yeah.
And they still are to a certain degree, but I was kind of maybe looking with that more critical eye and kind of throwing my bias aside a little bit.
Sure.
And I guess I won't get into any particulars because I can't necessarily, as I'm watching, I can like kind of pick them.
Yeah.
But as I'm, you know, recalling, I can't really think of specific instances per se.
I always think of like it's the hobbits and like the dwarf, like in Gimli and stuff, where you like look at them and you're like, okay, so in this shot, like, and they do a really good job of masking by doing cuts, but like you look at it and when they're like, if Gandalf's talking to Frodo and he's like holding his hand or something, that's not like Elijah Wood, you know, or like when they do like a shot like that or from a distance and they show like the whole fellowship and they're all kind of walking together. It's like, that's not, you know, Sean Astin and that's not John Rhys-Davies, like that. Those are the doubles that are in there. So sometimes when they're walking or running around, I'm like, that's not them. Like, you know, but like, that's just because I'm looking for it because I've watched it so many times.
Really?
I'm like, that's not.
It still does kind of confuse me a little bit how they did the size differences between like the hobbits, the dwarves, the elves, and the people and all that. Like,
I think a lot of it, I think the best example of it comes up in Return of the King, where it's Gandalf and Pippin in Minas Tirith, and they're looking across the way and they're looking at Mordor, and Pippin is sitting with like his arms on a railing, and you can just kind of guess that he's just kneeling down there, and Gandalf is standing behind him. They're just like, just kneel down, just, you know what I mean? Like, that's how you do it, because you're doing like, when you do a shot when it's just like Elijah Wood, like Frodo at a distance in the wilderness, you don't have to be like, all right, he has to be the short version. You can do whatever version because he's not standing next to somebody. But the second he's next to someone, you're like, okay, you know, you gotta like, and when it's like Frodo's little hands and like, you know, Aragorn closes his hands, like that's not Elijah Wood, you know, it's probably somebody else. And he's just, but anyway, that's like the little stuff. And then some of the CG, I think the troll is maybe the weirdest one as far as like
the troll in the mines.
Yeah, I think he's probably like the weirdest looking thing, just because everything up until that point, for the most part, maybe Sauron too, is practical, you know, and it's jarring when it's not. Like, you're so used to every bad guy being practical up until this point, right?
I guess I kind of agree, yeah.
Again, these are little nitpicky things. But let's just start. I have notes, too, that we'll probably come back to. But let's just start at the beginning. I think out of any film ever, what film has got the feeling and the gravitas that Lord of the Rings has, let alone starts off with a full black screen for a bit, and it's just Galadriel talking? And it's like Elven, and then translated into Common, and then back and forth. It's like, how many movies do that and like get away with it? Because like if other movies did that, people would be so frustrated. Like if Star Wars started and there was just black screen and it was someone just talking, people would be like, what's going on? Like Lord of the Rings gets away with it, right? I'm like, and it's so chilling because it's got the music and stuff too. It's like, it's so good. Like Cate Blanchett, I'm like, yes, love it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it carries some weight with it and kind of really sets the tone out of the gate, you know?
Yeah.
Despite how happy, cheery the movie starts out.
Yeah. Well, it's you know what, too? It is, with the Shire stuff, maybe it's more happy, cheery, but like that kind of information dump in the beginning, which a lot of people probably, I think her narrating over like the battles and stuff is really cool. Where she's like, the last alliance of men and elves went to go fight in Mordor, and you're like, wow, this is kind of a big deal. Like right off the bat, you're like, this is cool. Which I love. In the beginning, you get like battle wary Elrond, and he's like, you know, calling out commands and stuff, and the elves are so precise they can shoot like past his neck, and they're just like, it's like the arrows are going past his hair, and he's totally fine with it. Like he's just like, yep, he's like, shoot now, and it's like, but it's like, oh god. Just one elf. Just
when is that?
Right in the beginning, during the fight, like on the slopes of Mount Doom, all the orcs are running at the elves. Sure. Like all those elves are just waiting there, and then they do their kind of, which I think there's a lot of shaky cam in this one. I don't think it's that bad, but that's because the fights are so kind of chaotic anyway. Like it doesn't bother me as much as like more modern ones do. Did you feel that at all?
I noticed maybe 1 or 2 points of shaky cam to kind of hide the choreography of the sword fighting, but nothing, you know, and with the orcs and stuff, because somehow, obviously it's bloody and gruesome, but somehow they can't show every single sword slice to flesh, right?
Yeah.
that's a lot of like, you know, special effects blood to get, you know, worked in. Not special effects, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, this guy gets a blood packet with a hose, and this guy gets a squeeze tube with a hose.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, Pete.
Yeah. And,
you draw a lot.
Well, there's a lot of like blunt kills, and I think that's more so maybe in the future ones too, but there's a few in this one are just knockdowns where you like, if you go back and watch some of the fights, you get like Aragorn who will just kind of like tap someone on the helmet, and they'll just like they'll just lay down. Like,
I guess
double check.
I'm gonna look for that some more as I watch through some of these, but that it's is good. Not. I'm not into that.
It's like I get it. There's just so many that they're killing, and in the moment, there's even one later on. And it's during a very emotional moment, but it's Boromir's last stand, and he goes to punch an Uruk-hai, and you could tell like the Uruk-hai knew it was coming, so the Uruk-hai kind of jumps back with it, and like you could tell he probably didn't get hit, like, you know, and they just, because it's like a slow, like, you know, it's like, and it's like, I love it. I don't have a problem with it. I'm like, I get it. I like to think that Uruk-hai knew it was coming and was like, I'm gonna jump backwards and like lay down and be like, whoa, I missed, or you missed me. But Yeah, and there's some of the sword blocks too, like later on that like you could tell that they're just like, like they block it with like these big kind of like hand and a half swords, and they kind of like that, and you could tell that the guys who are like the Urukai who are kind of swinging like this are like a tap. They're like tap. They're like,
Oh.
I'm sorry. It's again. I'm getting the little nitpicks out of the way because I love this film. Anyway, back to it. The Shire and stuff. Now I watched, just for full exposure here, I watched the extended edition. Joe, you watched the regular edition.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot more that they added, which we don't need to fully get into, but they do kind of even start there with the Shire, and they kind of get into more of like the hobbits and the hobbit culture and all that stuff. And I still think the Shire is like one of it's such a great setting. It's like pitch perfect. Like, I don't know how you could make that any better. Like, I look at it and I'm like, spot on. You know what I mean? Like, it looks so good. What did you think of the Shire?
Oh, no, I think it serves the purpose as a quaint, calm place. Nothing could go wrong here type of a place. And,
they just want to eat, man.
One families do another. But, yeah, I mean, as far as what I think of the Shire,
it's pretty basic.
The practicality of it, it's built, it's basic. There's not much to it. It's basically rolling hills of meadows, wood doors in the hill.
Yeah.
And little paths. But I mean, yeah, it's cool. It's very well done and fitting. Obviously, it's pretty, but yeah, I don't know if there's too much more to say.
That's all right, because the thing we got to say about it's the introduction to one of the greatest characters of all time, in my personal opinion. Gandalf the Grey looks perfect. Ian McKellen couldn't have cast it better, I don't think. Apparently, Sean Connery was up for the role at one point, which is kind of nuts to me. But I think he's just so good, and like his introduction, talking to Frodo, kind of, almost he's like re-chastising him or kind of batting it back, being like, I'm never like, wizard's never late, nor is he early. Like, I love that whole thing. And he's kind of coarse, but he's just really fun. And like the hobbits love him, and he's got a soft spot for like the kids, and he shoots the fireworks. And Frodo at one point, he's like, hey, like us Bagginses, we were kind of well regarded until you kind of came into our lives. And he just like plays the fool. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, he's just like, that's good.
Yeah, as he looks at a couple on their sidewalk by their home, they're like giving him the frowny face.
Yeah.
Like,
but then that guy later on, you see he like kind of even smiles
when he shoots the fireworks for the kids.
Like, Gandalf, man. Like, so did Gandalf make those fireworks? I was thinking about this. He had to have, because they're like
definitely imported from China.
But like, was he like sitting somewhere before he like showed up? He's like putting them together. He's like, this is gonna be.
I don't know.
Like,
there's nothing magic about it besides the fact that he could create a little heat on the wick, right? I don't know.
No, well, he makes the dragon one. Remember? There's like the dragon firework, like the special dragon firework. Remember that one?
Yeah. I mean, I assume there's some magic involved with that. I guess, yeah, there'd have to be, right? But
yeah.
Whatever. I was just saying for the. Yeah, I don't know, whatever.
Here's the question: do you think that Saruman at some point saw the fireworks and was like, "I bet I could make some explosives out of this"? Like, is Gandalf the reason that Helm's Deep went down the way it did? Because he was like before all this, Gandalf's like, hey man, I'm making these cool things, they're called fireworks, and Saruman's like, this is stupid. And then he like saw it and he's like, we could use that for different purposes if we wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Like the kind of the idea of like black gunpowder in this world. Like, did it start with Gandalf? Like, did he start like this arms race unwittingly? I don't know. It's just something to think about.
When is the Battle of Helm's Deep?
That comes it's coming up in the next movie. So like the bombs and stuff, like okay. That's all I'm trying to say. Which I do want to touch on the magic a little bit here.
I don't remember the bombs.
You'll see them. Oh, you'll be like, oh, no, and then you'll be like, But I think the magic in this one, I like to call it like old magic or kind of like folklore magic. It's not like something you use all the time, like in Harry Potter, like they're using magic kind of constantly. You kind of use it to do something very specific or to enhance something. It's not like Gandalf is using it all the time. He does use it a lot more in the Hobbit trilogy, I think. But it's a lot of it because I think he would kill everybody if he used more of his magic. Like, I don't think they overdo it. Like, do you think the magic is enough? Would you like more? How do you feel about it?
There's little touches of it. You never quite know the extent of his ability, and I think that's purposeful, right? Yeah. Like, so when he stops the Balrog down in the mine, I mean, did you think he was capable of such a thing until he reached the bridge? No, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Right.
Which that fire sword hitting the shield and it like lavas off of it is really cool. Like sloughs off of it is really it's a really good effect.
Cool.
It's like,
the Balrog overall is very cool. It's an example of 2001. I mean, that's CG of course.
That design though.
Very cool design, very cool idea. I don't. So I guess let's cover that sequence a little bit.
Yeah.
All the orcs in the mines,
the goblins.
I don't know. Hold on. All right, I don't understand. So 1 minute,
I'll help you.
So there's orcs attacking them in that tomb.
Those are technically goblins.
The troll shows up.
Yeah.
The cave troll shows up. Those are goblins or orcs? Why do they look like orcs?
Okay, so here's the factor, and I could be wrong about this. Somebody watches will probably correct me. I think orc is a catch-all term because obviously his blade glows blue when he's nearby orcs. It happens in the mines, and it happens at Am and Hen, that fight at the end of Fellowship. And those guys are like half orc, half goblin men, like the Uruk-hai, but we'll get to them later. So the goblins, I think it's like every rectangle is a square, but not every square is a rectangle situation. So it's like orc is this kind of umbrella term, and then you have like goblins, and then like your more classic orcs, which I consider to be like the guys who work for Saruman, like the little, like the minions who's like, my lord, that kind of, those guys are the guys in Mordor. And then you have like the Uruk-hai, and they're all kind of like branches off of that. I know it's a little weird, but goblins are usually like smaller. They crawl on walls. They're dwelling in the caves.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, if these are orcs, why the hell are they crawling down the columns like spiders?
No, that's like a goblin. I think that's more of like a goblin-specific ability.
Yeah. So now when you go back to the Hobbit trilogy or whatever it was, and they have... Aren't the goblins like naked little skinny?
Yeah. So that's
more
a great
spidery looking things.
That's what's frustrating. That group, and I don't know if it changes from like which region they're in, because they're in Moria versus like I think it's the Misty Mountains, which I'm probably screwing all this up. Moria's probably in the Misty Mountains, but yeah. So they're like weird pink things in the Hobbit, and they don't look anything like that. I don't know why they changed it. I think they made a lot of weird kind of aesthetic changes in The Hobbit, though. Like, even the wargs look very different. They're very, I think because they're not, like, Saruman wargs. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why they changed them. I like this design. They look incredibly terrifying. Like, there's one in particular that kind of it's like Adam when they're all surrounded, and he's got like the big eyes, and you're like, wow, that thing's terrifying.
Oh yeah, that's true. The big eyes. Yeah. I would prefer the goblins to be a little bit more different than standard orcs.
Sure.
Just like the Uruk-hai are a different off breed of orc, and they're different, and you can tell them right away. But the goblins, I would want to be more, if they're living down in the mines like that and stuff, I don't know. I want them to be a little more animalistic and less humanoid or orcish. I want them to be, I guess, more closer to the Hobbit version.
Okay. Yeah.
Like not a bunch of armor, tool wise, very, what's the word? Less sophisticated.
Sure.
Because they're coming out of the deep caverns of the earth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't come across super well in the movie, but if you look at them, actually, you can kind of see their movement is pretty different than regular orcs. Orcs are more kind of upright a little bit. They kind of have a little bit of a hunch. Goblins are much closer to the ground, and the armor they have is kind of like cobbled together stuff. But again, it's hard to tell when it's like super dark. And I know what you mean, because you look at them. Because I remember hearing this, and I remember sitting next to my mom in the movie theater, and they're like, "Oh, orcs are coming," and I was like, "Okay, how are these different than the ones we saw in the beginning?" And she's like, "Just watch." And then I was like, they still look kind of similar, like I was like, And And I think, again, like orcs, like Saruman said, were like twisted, tortured, mutilated elves. And that's why like regular orcs look still kind of like, they have like the pointy ears and they look like you could still kind of make it out. But like the goblins, like that's what they have, like the big eyes, and they're kind of like a little more animalistic, but not enough. Like I know what you mean. Like, you want it. You want more. You want something.
Maybe it doesn't have to be totally like The Hobbit, but something closer to it. Yeah, I wanted more. Another thing, orcs. They say orcs are just twisted, tortured elves.
Yeah.
And so they just lose all of their precision and
that would be so
elegance.
Cool. I want to see a super orc who's just Legolas, but he looks like
I want to see the orc version of Legolas. What the fuck? Come on.
Yeah.
So I find that kind of humorous, but so then you get to the we were just talking about Urukai.
Yeah.
What's there? I thought they were dead elves crossed with orcs
okay. So from my understanding, again, this is very basic understanding. So I think the very first orcs were the twisted elves, and then they spawned off of that. But still, you'd like to think there was like one or two of those super like elf orc things that was like around still, and you're like, that guy is very scary because like, he's got a bow, and maybe that's what Lurtz is, like the main kind of bad guy in this one. But then Urukai are basically a combination of orcs and goblin men, and the trick apparently somehow combining them together allowed them to move in daylight and also be like 6.5 feet tall, or whatever they are, like 6 feet tall, broad, like very bipedal, not very animalistic, but very like skilled or like good like warriors, I guess I should say. So maybe that's that. I don't know why goblin men, because I think of like, what's a goblin man? Exactly, yeah. So I like look at the goblins that we've seen in this movie. I'm like, okay, so you took that and you took like one of those like orcs that might work for Saruman, and you genetically put them together in the pit or something, and that produced this thing. I don't know if it's some sort of like dominant trait versus recessive trait, and that's what like brought it out in them. But basically all Saruman was trying to do is to make a super army that can move in the daylight and maybe could like oppose Sauron at some point, because the Uruk-hai are basically like orcs 2.0.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
But then they maybe oppose Sauron at one point?
Yeah, because that was a tenuous relationship, because the thought was always like when they were done working together, that Sauron, like Gandalf said, it's like he doesn't share his power, and Saruman was probably like, yeah, I know that's coming. Like, I'm gonna make sure I'll be ready. But
really, so he would raise this army for Sauron, and then when all is said and done, and Sauron's gonna basically he's done using Saruman.
Yeah.
He's going to turn the army that he raised for him on him.
Maybe, and the problem is he had like 10,000 Uruk-hai, but then Sauron had like 100,000 orcs, which is like, I don't care how you slice that. Like, Sauron's probably taking the day there.
I don't know. Those Uruk-hai, they're pretty...
I like them. They do some of them get easily defeated, but I love them.
Like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, they just turn those guys into cannon fodder regardless.
But I will say this. I will take them any day over just the CGI nothingness of the feeling that you get in The Hobbit, where like all of them, even the goblins, which they really did make outfits for actors to look like those goblins, but it was all tangible, all real. But then they're like, no, we're just doing the CG. This is all for the most part real, and it definitely, you feel it like when Aragorn comes around in Amon Hen and there's like 40 of them waiting for him, and you're like, oh, like that is cool. Like you're like, hoo, like that is a...
Oh no, I hate to jump to the end of the movie at this point in the discussion, but when the Uruk-hai are chasing them on the riverbank and they confront them, and Aragorn takes Lurtz out.
Yeah,
like, I mean, that is cool.
Should we talk about that fight right now?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, you just don't get that effect with CGI.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, that was a real monstery guy. There was a guy in all that getup.
Yep.
And they fought. It looked real. That guy, it just gives you more of a feeling, and it makes the movie seem more plausible.
Yeah. So in the extended edition, we'll get into it for just a second here. There's a moment in the fight when Aragorn's fighting this guy who is 3-shot Boromir. He himself has dropped a hero, which I don't think in the book. I think it's just Boromir has been riddled with arrows and is dying or dead. But this is way better. I think it's so cool to enhance the situation with like a super like, and this guy before, I think he's even scarier when he's back with Saruman and he doesn't like have anything and he doesn't have the white hand right, and he's just standing there and it's just like you're like, this guy is intimidating. And I think he plays Goth. I think Gothmog is the name of it, like the pink deformed orc leader in Return of the King. I think the same guy plays him, so that just shows how crazy that makeup is. But that fight is so good. But anyway, in the extended edition, you actually see where Aragorn gets that dagger. He actually gets it from I think it's Celebrimbor, from Galadriel's like the Elven Wood or whatnot. But he gets that, so he stabs that dagger into his leg, right? And they show it and it's like hanging there. And I'm thinking like, all right, so that must have been the muscle they added, and they like stabbed it through there. And in the extended edition, Joe, Lurtz takes it out and, in the regular one, he throws it at him and Aragorn, he like deflects it, right?
Yeah, deflects it, yeah.
Which apparently really happened. And I think that was a real dagger. And they talked about that. And they were like, yeah, we're lucky that Viggo was ready for that because Viggo like freaking deflected like a real dagger because some of that stuff apparently happens. I was like, oh my God. But in the extended edition, Lurtz takes it out at first and he looks at him and he licks the dagger. And I was like, why didn't that make it to the final cut? Yeah,
I think I've seen that version.
So cool. Like
they could have done both. He could have licked it and then threw it at him. But
I think there's some stuff in there that kind of ties back to Peter Jackson's kind of like horror roots. And there's a few like beheadings that like have just squirts of just like black blood that they're like, all right, we got to take some of this like kind of stuff out that's like it's on the line of PG-13. And they're like, all right, we'll take out the moment where he licks the knife because I like to think that's the thing that put him over. Like the senses.
No. I mean, there were a few moments I saw the blood spurt after a beheading, and
yeah. But anyway, that fight, I love that Lurtz is so strong. He gets tackled by Aragorn in the first moment, drops his bow, grabs a shield and sword immediately, and then throws the shield like even crazier like Captain America in a vertical or a horizontal line, and he pins him against a tree, and it's like, what?
Yeah, that's like a 1 in a billion type of deal.
Dude, he's so jacked, man. I just love that fight. It's the best one-on-one fight in the whole series. I love it so much. It's
hands down. It's cool.
So cool. But talking about Aragorn, let's jump back to the beginning here. Talking about your ring race you love so much. That fight on the top of Weathertop with good old like Aragorn, sword in one hand, torch in another.
That's a weird thing. Like they do like a zoom out like landscape and then zoom in, and 1 minute you do get the feeling that they're like it's like this desolate kind of foggy swamp leading up to this like what used to be some sort of like temple-y thing, and now it's decrepit and whatnot. But they do a shot where they've got the guys in the center of this like call it the Colosseum type thing or the temple, but it seems very disconnected from everything, and you start to get that sense like, am I on a sound stage right now?
Oh really? You felt that way? I didn't feel that at all.
I felt that way at 1 second. That's about as specific as I can get with it, but I remember getting that feeling for a second. I was like, what is something's weird here. Just a little bit. Where they were felt disconnected from the perimeter. Okay, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
and it didn't jive with what I saw when the ring wraiths were coming up to the structure. I don't know. Either way, what a cool moment. Yeah. I love how they kind of like almost ghostly glide through the fog as they're approaching.
Dude, I love it. And that's like carried on from like the previous stuff in Bree, where it's like they show up and they enter the inn just like in attack position. And there's like
I love that.
Of the keeper, like the innkeeper, who's just like this. He's like, oh my God. And they just, like, it shows them just passing by on the side. It's like, that's perfect. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a cool moment.
All in the room, and they're all just like, all right, you freaking ready for this? It's like, Oh my god! Like
one of them's like, hold on. Shing, shing, shing.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that moment at the prancing pony in there.
Oh my god, it's cool. So good. It's like, and that town of Bree is like the classic, like maybe first or second stop in like a fantasy film or RPG or something, where you're like, oh yeah, this is like the classic medieval town. There's like a Peter Jackson cameo briefly, but that scream they do, and just the ring race in general. I think the red eyes on the horse are a little weird, but it's interesting that the hooves are all bloody. I don't know how you feel about that. I know you're big into aesthetics. How do you feel about the horses?
Yeah, so they're kind of disguised as riders. I didn't quite understand it. Because I guess they're typically not. They're disguised as riders in black.
Very good.
That's what they say in the beginning. It's kind of interesting. I'm kind of like, disguised. So what would they normally be?
Like they'd be the ghostly figures, more or less. That's how you kind of see them. Yeah, you see them in The Hobbit for a little bit, but they look way cool like this. And I like the metal greaves and the metal like boots that they have that are really weird. Like you couldn't walk around in them. They're like weird, like pointy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind a point, but I don't like how the point like turns down.
Yeah, like on one of them, it's got like the point.
You'd be walking on your heels all the time. I'd be like, what the? Who made this shit?
Think about the stirrups, like trying to get out of those. Like, oh,
click, click. It's like they're walking. It would be click, 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 click.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless, I mean, there are things to pick on with them and all that, but let me take a step back. I guess, yeah. So the inn and everything is amazing. I love how they have that. It's an immediate reaction when the hobbits meet them on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, it's immediate. They're like, "What was that?" They know it's not just some guy in a black robe riding around.
Yeah.
And they sense the power of the ring, but only if it's like put on kind of a thing. Like they don't know, it's in his upper chest pocket. like so when that one like leans over the edge of the road on the roots on the tree, and all the dead, the bugs start to come out, like death stench kind of a thing. When it does that, it's like, so it doesn't like sense that the one thing that they're after is like 2 inches away from his hand.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me's like, man, you would think.
He's sniffing. Remember we talked about they sniff? They smell stuff?
A little bit. That was kind of interesting. Yeah.
I feel like the bugs are running away. Did you ever?
Running away?
Yeah, like the bugs are trying to get away from, like, they're like, oh, we gotta get away from this friggin' thing. Like, this thing sucks. Like,
I don't know. I guess maybe. Yeah. Either way, I love the sense and the feeling you get out of them, and obviously the sound is, the sound is just super impactful and just jives perfectly.
Do you know where the sound comes from?
It's always like that elk bugle sound.
Oh, like their scream?
Yeah.
Oh, do you actually know where the sound comes from?
I used to.
Okay, I will remind people who have never watched this before. At least this is what the special edition stuff has told me in the past. I believe one day, and she's pretty I don't know, reclusive. She doesn't like to be in front as much as her husband, but Peter Jackson's wife. I forget which one she is, but anyway, she came in and she did this scream for the Nazgul. They were trying to find out. They're like, what are we going to do for this? We need to have a cool scream. We have to have a cool noise or whatever for the actual Nazgul in the ring race. And she came in and did that like high pitched, like ethereal, terrifying scream. And they were all like, yeah, that's the one we're going to use. And like they use it a ton, which is good because it's really cool.
For the actual ring race, or
not for the horse?
The Nazgul or whatever is the dragon, right?
No. That's the fell beast. That's like the Elkhorn thing. Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember. All I know is that they make that same bugle sound that an elk makes, that like high pitched whistle.
Oh, really? Maybe are you talking about the actual ring race themselves?
That or the horse, I don't know.
I mean,
they're
done
they're on the trail at night and they make the sound, I'm pretty sure, and it's that bugle that that bugle and elk makes. I mean, it's.
Well, the ring race have horns too. You know, they just bring them out and they're like, over here. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, kind of. That's to a certain degree, a little bit what it's like. But there's that squelchy scream, and they also do that kind of whistly, high pitched bugle. But either way, they meld well. They're not totally distinct from each other. They match up so that they're coming from them. But I won't overanalyze it. I guess, I trust you. I just, early on, as I'm watching The Fellowship, they start making those screechy, squelchy sounds.
I know what you mean. I don't know if that might be the horses or not. But again, did you like the red eyes? I never got a reading.
Yeah. Getting back to their aesthetic, I do. I like the horses. Like, they're still like living horses. It's not like they're riding like a half bone, half skin horse or anything like that.
Hard to do.
Oh yeah. How could you do it? First off, but I like that they give them that kind of like undead feel.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I guess. Like
which makes them seem a little bit more super.
Yeah,
that's not the right word, but fantastical.
That's a good yeah.
But the nails coming out of the hooves, I almost assume like they dug these guys out of the ground just like the Uruk-hai or something like that.
Sure.
Like they were, I don't know, something of that nature.
That's cool.
But the red eyes, I do like the fact that the red eyes aren't like, they're not like lit and glowing red like a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
They're actually more of like a very faint red, barely a glow. Like they look like natural, but they're all just kind of redded out, almost as if like blood had pooled in there a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So because I actually remember specifically looking at that a few times because I was like, I gotta look at the horses, and they look good. I liked it. So I like the red eyes. I don't think they're overdone by any means.
Sure.
Could they have been overdone? Yeah, I think a little more, and if they were there. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So there was a fine line to walk with them.
Yeah. But one thing I love too about these guys, and it's such a simple design too, but they do one or two close-ups like on the ring wraiths themselves. Like they'll do like a side shot, but then they'll do like one where like zooms in right on like their face, and it's just darkness. It's just black.
Yeah,
nothing. Like it's so good. Like they could have easily done like a skeleton face, or like they could have done creepy eyes, but it was like, nope, it's just darkness. And it's just like, it's like.
No, that's the right call.
It's the right call.
It's the right call.
For sure.
Yeah. You don't ever get a lot of time to really look at them detail-wise. They're either always moving or it's so dark you don't quite get that feature detail. Like when you talk about this look on them, I think you get that at that like temple. What do you call that? That temple scene?
Weather top?
Weather top? That's what they call it?
Yeah, it's the name of it. It's an old watchtower.
Okay, yeah. But when they're there, I think you kind of get a chance to inspect them a little more closely.
Yeah, and there's that great moment where one does a take like this. He's like, whoa, and then Aragorn whips the torch into his face. He's the last one. He's like, oh, everything's going wrong, and he's like, wait, where's that guy? Turns around and just torch in the face. Like,
yeah. Yeah, so good. So here's the thing. I love the ring race all the way up until that point. When they get in that fight with them, I like the moment up until he stabs Frodo and then, things change and they start fighting and all that. That fight and Aragorn, like, I get the fire thing. Like, okay, riddle me this. If that's the ring race one weakness, I don't. Does he actually kill any of them there? No, he doesn't, because all 9 are chasing the elf girl through the woods after that.
Are all 9 chasing her? I thought there were 7.
Yeah. Oh, I'm pretty sure there were 9. I think I was counting. They all get washed away in the river, and it looked like there were 9 or 10.
I was looking because I was thinking maybe the 2 that were set on fire didn't show up, because he sets 2 on fire, and I was like, well, those 2 might be like, all right, we're down to heal. And I think it's the elements, because they kind of show it on the Buckleberry Ferry, they're like, we don't do water, and then with the fire, they're like, we don't do fire, and so when they get to the river again with Arwen, it's like, oh yeah, they really don't like water. I don't know. I think it's kind of a cool thing, but it's for some odd reason that's not information that's spread to everybody. And I just don't think a lot of people know about the ring wraiths. So, like, if so, you just be like, oh yeah, just light them up with fire. Just like anybody could fight them. Like, but I think they're so intimidating, nobody thinks to try that because you're like, okay, I don't know this.
Oh, I mean, I see a guy and just I see a humanoid figure in nothing but big black cloth.
Yeah.
That's getting lit on fire. Like, that's my first thought.
But it doesn't kill them, right? So like they do come back, and I don't know if they're in that chase sequence or not. I was trying to kill them.
The thing is I feel like, okay, that was a no-win situation. So how do you actually have them have a conflict and not win out, right?
And not kill all the hobbits.
Yeah. So somehow you have to give them an upper hand or have Aragorn, win the day. But I feel like they could have done it in similar fashion with the fire and all that good stuff. But maybe, I'll be honest, I think the acting on the ring race part was a little cheesy. What you pointed out there, where he's like, whoo, fire in the face. I'm like,
I love it.
First of all, I don't like that type of movement out of them. I want them to be more, I don't want to say ghostly, but I guess that's kind of it. But I want them to maybe be more fluid in their movement. I don't want them to be like a human that just got surprised because he got sucker punched in the cheek. I want them to maybe be a little more, I mean, they need to be. Right now, to this point, they're the baddest of the bad, really. Minus what? Saruman, I guess. I mean,
maybe, yeah.
I don't know, but it's as far as bad guys that you'd be scared of running around in the woods, they're it, right? I could kill an orc or two, I guess, is what I'm getting at. This instead of a ring wraith, who would I rather run into, right?
Sure. I have a theory. Do you want to hear the theory?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I just feel like they cheese them up in that fight. That's what I'm getting.
So the ring race up until that point, you're right. They are coordinated. They are so coordinated. They move into they SWAT team buildings together, like just in perfect precision. They get over beds together. They're like, all right. They walk into that fight against the hobbits, all their swords like this, and you're like, okay, these guys have got it together. And like to them, they're like, who have we been hunting up until this point? We've been hunting 4 little hobbits. We're gonna show up. We're gonna mess these guys up, and then, out of nowhere, they're like, oh, the ring. Holy crap, it really is here. And they're kind of freaking out about it. But these guys were old kings, right? They might not have been the greatest fighters. Like, they probably didn't fight for a while. And then there's Aragorn who shows up. He's battle ready. And they were like, hey, he's throwing off our whole cool dance vibe mojo. Like, we can't be coordinatedly stabbing things together right now. So that's the reason they all turn to be like, oh no! Like, they all start freaking out because they're not ready to fight anybody. Because they're like, we're just gonna... They even pull the 2, like, hobbits in front. They just, like, throw them to the sides. Like, there's, like, at the same moment, they're like, whoop, like that. They just kind of, like, throw them. And you're like... That was the moment that just broke their momentum, But you're right, it is a little corny. That's just the way I try to justify, because the coolest guys do get kind of turned into like bumbling idiots for a minute there. They're like,
yeah, they almost for a split second, they're almost going to be called cannon fodder with the way Aragorn takes care of them.
Yeah, but they come back. They're unkillable, except
they're kind of unkillable, right? So okay,
yeah,
okay. But still, like, I would have rather have seen some sort of, I don't know. I mean, yeah, a way to defeat them or get them to leave. Maybe play more with the fire idea.
Yeah.
Right? Sure. Like, soak the floor in brandy or something. Right? You got that in the satchel on the horse. Soak the floor and then light the flame when they walk in to get Frodo, and lights them all up, and they all squelch and scream and like float out of there or something. Right?
If they were consistent,
that would be great.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like a human to human fight kind of a thing. But you guys are wearing a lot of clothes. I know I can set you on fire.
Well, they should, if like they became consistent villains for the Fellowship throughout, then it'd be kind of cool to have them like get tactics like that, where they're like, hey, oh yeah, next time we'll make sure Aragorn and Legolas, like, they've got bows right now. Aragorn uses it briefly in this one, but like they'll have fire arrows or something. But I think it's because you don't really see them too much again until like really weird moments that they're not prepared for it. I know it's not perfect.
It is weird. You never see them again almost at all, do you?
You do.
Until they come back on the flying beast.
The fell beast, yeah, you'll see him a little bit and then Osgiliath, they try to get the ring again for Frodo. They did have a contingency plan, though, which I'll give the Witch King that, because he uses the Morgul Blade, which is like a little dagger, and he tries to turn Frodo into a wraith. He's like, oh, you know what? If I'm not going to kill this guy, I'm going to make sure that even if he gets away again, that he's going to turn into one of us, and then we'll have the ring.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was like, there you go. Not a bad... He tried. Yeah. But speaking of fights, and you didn't...
How do you know it was the Witch King?
How do I know it's Witch King? They bring it up in Return of the King. Gandalf, they're talking about the Witch King, and they're doing this really cool moment where they're showing him suit.
Don't they go into they're in the mountains and they stumble upon their tomb or something? And
that is in The Hobbit.
Son of a bee.
Yeah.
And we never see him in The Hobbit, do we?
Yes, we do. We see him in the Battle for the Five Armies. They're the ghost versions, so they're not as cool. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's because we know them as riders in black, but they're disguised. So most of the time they wouldn't be like this. But for us, we're like, that's the ring wraith. But what was I getting to?
It's the Grim Wraith.
Yeah.
Grim Reaper.
But anyways,
such an iconic figure.
Yeah, Gandalf tells Pippin. He says, like, when they're talking about the Witch King, he's like, he's the leader of their armies. He also says he's the one that stabbed Frodo on Weathertop. And he's like, oh, that guy. He doesn't have his cool, crazy, like, helmet thing on, though, right now. He doesn't have that yet. Which is pretty
who
funny.
does he tell stabbed Frodo on Weathertop?
Gandalf tells Pippin in Minas Tirith.
Oh, okay.
It's like, they're talking about, like, the coming armies and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, he's the one that stabbed him. He's like, oh, man, really? That guy? He's pretty rough. So that's the only reason I know that he stands out. The other ones, all interchangeable. I don't know him. I don't know which one's which. But speaking of Gandalf and other fights, I wanted to talk about the wizard fight just briefly between Gandalf and Saruman.
The ring wraiths are really cool.
Yeah. Ring wraiths are cool. Just how dare you?
Yeah, so the ring wraiths.
No, it's not that. I like.
What was that, ring race? Yeah.
Yeah, that part when the ring race had the stabs.
I do like those quite a bit.
I think they could have gone crazy with that fight, but they didn't, and I respect it. It's a lot of just old men yelling and telekinetic blasts and stuff, but I'm really okay with it. I think it's fine. It's brutal. It's not like Voldemort versus Dumbledore. It's just like kind of thing. I don't know. I think it's all right. What do you think?
Well, yeah, they're not going to chant up some spell at each other in like a split second. Those things seem to take a little bit of time, so it's not like that's a choreographed way of fighting.
Yeah.
So they're going to use their kind of quick tricks and telekinetic type of deals. But
do you ever wonder how they get Gandalf?
I don't understand how he gets him on the roof.
Thank you. I was just going to say, how does he get him on the roof? I think he must open something up, right? Like there must be.
Yeah, there's like a shutter up there and it opens and then it shuts, just like, the hatch on a submarine, only automatic or something.
I do like the kind of puppeteering that he does. Saruman does it twice where he has Gandalf spinning in that really weird way, which I'm pretty sure is a stunt double. In the room.
Oh yeah, he looked like he was getting dizzy, and they just must have him slung up by the waist and the knees or something.
And then later on, when he's on the top of Orthanc, and he throws him off the side, and he's like hanging there, but he's like perpendicular to the actual like tower itself. Yeah. I'm like, that's so cool. He's like straight up threatening him. He's like, I could drop you. Like, it's like, I don't know. I like it. I think Christopher Lee is amazing. I also think Ian McKellen's amazing. And they're both great. And I just, like, Saruman, from the beginning is a bad guy. Like, everybody knows, like, he's a bad guy. I think that's the reason Gandalf didn't bring Frodo with him. Because I've always thought, like, why wouldn't you be like, hey, Frodo, come with me. We're going to go see the head of my order. He'll probably know what to do. But he's like, nope, you go to Bree. I'll go check this out. Because I'm going to bring it up. But I'm not sure. Like, I feel like Gandalf wasn't even sure, right? Otherwise, he would have brought Frodo with him. Right?
Why would Gandalf expect or suspect anyway? We don't have any background there to base any assumptions on. A prior meeting or him talking about him, or the other week when I met with Saruman, he had this thing going on. There's none of that. So
the only reason I say that is because he looks terrifying, and like his building looks like a straight up bad guy fortress.
I mean, that's for sure. Yeah.
So I just don't know why Gandalf didn't bring Frodo with him. That's the only reason I could think. It's like he just didn't trust anybody. He's like, well, I almost took the ring, but I didn't want it. and he totally would take the ring. Maybe that was the fear. Can we say that?
That's true too. Yeah, he's probably fearful of he doesn't want anybody else to lay eyes on it, get corrupted, and wanted to have it for their own, that sort of thing, or use it against Solomon or Sauron. Jeez,
I know, they're close.
The problem is the fact that those two guys have close names. Shame on J.R. Tolkien.
Do you know how to tell the difference? You know the one way that's helped me through the years. Do you want to know what it is?
There's an extra syllable in there.
No, think man has to be Saruman. Like, he is the guy. He's the dude. Sauron's like the super crazy tall guy. So you're just like Saruman. Oh, he's the humanoid looking dude.
I'll still not remember it.
You're welcome. I've helped you. No.
Sauron.
I love
Sauron.
Sauron. Sauron. I love his armor. I like that shot of him where he's like doing the whole, like, he's like, I'm making the ring, baby, like at the beginning, where he's like in Mount Doom, and he's like, yes, he's like, I'm finally doing it.
Confession, I missed that little portion. I came in right after the moment of cutting the fingers off.
Oh, did you like have it running and you're making food?
How'd you know I was making a snack? Of course I was making a snack.
Well, at least you didn't miss the part in the beginning where it's all black and she's talking. She could, like, you can have that effect anywhere. You could shut your eyes. And
I caught like the first couple seconds of that, and yeah.
Also, no wonder I was talking about Mordor. Well, it's okay. You're fine. It's all good.
Yeah, you're talking about the arrows past the elf guy, and I was like,
it's all good. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. What I was gonna say though, I love about this movie specifically is like this movie, and they do it in other ones too, but more so in this one. There's like these main, protagonists in Gandalf, Aragorn, even Galadriel, who all get this option where Frodo's like, if you want the ring, it's yours. Like, and they all like pass on it. Like, I like the idea of this thing of being
the crazy elf lady, the elf queen.
Galadriel.
Yeah, she went off the deep end for a second. Was she bad or good?
She's good. The problem is she was like, okay, and she's kind of scary in that moment. She was saying like, if she took the ring, she would become something different. She would become like this terrifying but also beloved creature that like would rule the whole world, but also people be afraid of her, but they would just like fawn over her. It was this kind of like combo thing. And she's desired that power, but she was like, you know what? Nope, I don't need it. And it's like, cool. And like all those characters, like it just kind of shows that like all of them are powerful to some extent, but they are passing up power. And the seeds they plant here, especially with Aragorn going forward, I think are the most interesting because he's so concerned. Like his arc over this movie is like, man, Isildur, like 3,000 years ago, like screwed up, and this is why we have this problem. And he's like, I have the same blood. I'm gonna do the same thing. But he overcomes it. Whereas his kind of foil or his dark mirror is Boromir, kind of like Indiana Jones and not Beckett. What's the the other guy, the French guy, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Belloc.
The other guy.
It's like that situation. So he sees Boromir and he's like, okay, this is like a weaker willed individual would do. This is what he was afraid of becoming. But he totally passes up that moment, And even Gandalf at the beginning is like, I would use it for good, but he's like, the problem is the power it would wield through me probably wouldn't be great. Like, if he used it. And I don't think it's just about being an invisible wizard, which I would imagine would be pretty powerful on the battlefield. But at the same time, I'm sure it would be like much worse than that. It's not just like, oh, cool, I'm invisible now. It's like,
is that the thing? You're always invisible that way? So like Sauron, when he's in his armor on the battlefield, is he invisible?
No.
In that armor?
No.
Is he like a spirit in the armor?
You can see him. Yeah, you can totally see him. No, he's there.
When he's in his armor on the battlefield, you don't see a physical...
You do.
You don't see any flesh. You just see a big suit of armor, don't you?
That's true. But that's because Sauron has never been super well described, I don't think, as like an actual character. For some reason, I always think of him as like a lizard man, and he's not. But just his armor, I'm always like, are you like a lizard? But there again, he could be like an ethereal spirit, but you like see the ring on him, so it doesn't seem to have that same like camouflage effect. And I don't know if it changes, if it's like, because we only see half.
He wore the ring on the outside of his armor.
Yeah, and it was like on. Actually, that might be his flesh. That might be his actual fingers. You know? Think about that for a second. Just try to digest that. I don't know. Don't worry about it. But yeah, he's there. Don't worry about it. Again, I think I don't remember if we ever see another person or like any other creature besides like a halfling ever put the ring on. You know, so I'm wondering if it has like a different effect, because maybe it just enhances. Oh, this is a great idea. Maybe it just enhances the abilities, the natural abilities of an individual, because the kind of magic that the hobbits have is like, if they want, they can
quiet secrets, sneak
unseen,
wherever they want.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, I could just go hide over here, and everybody's like, where'd he go? So like maybe that is like an enhancement. Just think if you put that on Legolas. You know, man, he's just like, he grabs like his whole quiver and he just like puts it back, and he's like, everybody's dead, and he's like, like, oh my gosh, we should.
The acrobatic moves he could do. I mean, geez,
he just does
upside down, backwards, up, down, around, and sideways.
You just look at Helm's Deep and just like the whole, like the Uruk are coming, and he's just walking in that, just like it's raining in the field all by himself. They're like, it's one elf, and then he's just like walking out. He's got like 4 bows, and they're like,
he just keeps pulling out a quiver of arrows, locking them all in, shoots them up in the sky, rains arrows.
And Gimli's just like, he's like, well, he's cheating, clearly.
Still only counts as 1.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man, you're cheating. Which I feel like in a war scenario, and that you see this later on too, if you were any archer, I feel like I'd want to be one of the archers behind the wall who's just kind of like, I think something's happening. Like, you're just shooting arrows over the wall.
Like, there's a lot of them. I gotta be hitting something.
Like, put all the elves up on the wall, and put all the. We'll talk about that for Helm's Deep. It's like,
how long do you think it would take you to be like, okay, I'm. If you're an archer, eventually you're gonna be like, hey, these guys have metal swords. They're wearing metal armor. All this metal. Yeah, my arrowheads are made out of metal, but the rest of it's a stick with some feathers.
Yeah,
this thing weighs like a couple ounces, for crying out loud. At what point are you like, this bow is going to be strong as shit? I'm making metal arrows, man. These are basically, I'm throwing spikes out there. Fuck arrows.
Okay.
Right?
That's a good point. Well, did Lurtz...
Because the weight behind that would allow it to just...
Did Lurtz have metal arrows? I was wondering about that. Because he has a metal bow. He's got like a reinforced bow.
I remember looking. Yeah, his bow had like an extreme drawback pressure, but I remember his arrows were very. They were a lot like thicker and twiggier.
Yeah.
Twiggier is not the right word, but like, his arrows were like the stump. Legolas's are like the twig.
Yeah.
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 But they seem to be natural wood and all.
You get those Aragorn, those 2 shots he uses his actual... He looks very... He doesn't seem like he's confident with his bow when they're in Moria. Maybe he's scared, but he's like, okay. He gets some good shots, though. And then Legolas, actually, in the extended edition, gets a different bow from Galadriel. So he gets like a special, stronger bow. And that's why I think specifically then... Well, he does... No, he does in Moria too. There's a few shots where he clears like a goblin, like he goes like right through him and like hits the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, he's like shooting.
Yeah.
Like later on when he's shooting at Amon-Hen, maybe that's his bow. It makes these noises where you're like, I think he's got a gun. Like he's just like thump, 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 and you're like, whoa. Okay.
Well, I remember when he's on the staircase before the Balrog shows up, he shoots an arrow up, and that's one of those moments where he hits him in the throat and it goes right through and hits the wall.
It's so cool. I love that.
I like those little details. Yeah, I like those little details. That's always fun.
I would hide if I were those goblins. I'd be like, why are we even fighting at this guy? I would stop shooting arrows at him. Like, he's going to kill us all.
Till the blonde lady leaves him. I'm not fighting him.
From a distance, though. I mean, you're not wrong.
From a distance. I don't know. Legolas is badass. I like him.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Which, side note, there's no downside to being an elf, it doesn't seem like. You've got like keen senses. You're like an amazing fighter. You live forever. You can walk on top of snow. Like I was trying to find some sort of big drawback to being an elf. I guess it sucks if you fall.
People make fun of your ears.
Maybe they do, but the hobbits also have the same type of ears. That's all I'm trying to say. I feel like
whatever. Just say that's the only drawback.
I just think if a few of them were a little more excited about helping out in this fight, I don't think they need to leave to the Grey Havens. That's all I'm trying to say. There's a lot of them leaving to the Grey Havens. They even have it in the extended edition. There's more of them. It's like just like 20 of you. All I need is like 20 who are like in the Legolas elf camp training school. Like I don't know what he's doing.
Are elves like at this point, are elves rare? Like there's diminishing populations of them or something?
Yeah, there's something with that where they're like there's a lot less of them, and they're all like abandoning Middle Earth to move on to like the Grey Havens, which is like, kind of like heaven, I think. Kind of they're like
yeah.
I'm out of here, man. We've had a few of our number taken and making it to these crazy orcs and stuff. Like we need to go. So
okay,
I don't know. Yeah.
Overall, the elves are really cool through and through. But
Rivendell, man, isn't Rivendell the best?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Some of those landscapes and settings that they create, regardless of whether there's computer involved or not, some of them are just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. Iconic.
But I mean, we could go on and on. There's so many details in this that you want to like question and talk about. What did you think about that?
It's the deep dive.
It is kind of fun. I guess. I had another one on the tip of my tongue a second. Oh, let's jump back to the fight between Saruman and Gandalf in the tower.
Whoa, yeah.
He beats him because he freaking rips the Gandalf's staff out of his hand, and then he's like double fit, he's like freaking he's akimbo in this shit, right? He's like take that, bam bam, pew pew.
I would have opened that.
How does Gandalf jump onto the eagle, fly away, and get his stuff back?
So, great question. Gandalf can make other staffs. Yeah.
Prove it.
I don't remember which one it is. There's one.
His hat too. I don't think he had the hat at the time. Where'd the hat come from?
Okay, so the hat is questionable. So I'm trying to remember. He takes the hat, goes into. He must have buy another hat. He also, I think, loses it when they're going into Moria during the Watcher sequence, the fight with the big octopus thing. But then he gets it later on again. I don't know. His hat. It's in his bag or something, but I think he can make up his
you ever see the movie the cartoon Felix the Cat?
He's
one of those situations. I got a bunch of hats in this bag.
Yeah. He also gets his staff blown up in Return of the King, but that's the extended edition. Like the Witch King shows up and the Witch King lights his sword on fire, like his own sword or something, and he like makes it explode or something like that. He like makes it. But anyway, yeah, you're right. How does he get his staff back? I think he can just get like a stick and he can,
It sounds like I'll need to watch the extended version of Return of the King.
Yeah. It's great.
Okay.
Great.
I'll suspend that call.
I know, it's not perfect. I like the whole.
But I immediately thought of it. I'm like, but what about his staff?
Yeah. I really like the idea of like the eagles, and it takes time, and like the moth is like the herald for the eagles, because like I would think, I don't know if eagles really eat moths or something. I don't know where the connection is there. But I love that. Where he just kind of catches it, and I think that's a real moth or whatever it is. It looks amazing. It's like sitting on his hand, and you're like looking at the detail, and you're like, wow, that's so.
I think that very well could have been a real moth for sure.
I was like, I love that whole bit, and I love that that's the first time you see the eagles. Is you're like, how is Gandalf going to get out of this situation? And up until this point, you've seen some kind of crazy things, but like summoning a giant eagle would not be the thing I would think he's going to get away with. And there's like the moon behind like Saruman, and then you just see it kind of duck past, and you're like, wait, what's happening? And you're like, oh, he just got away. Like he jumped on a giant eagle, which is always the biggest kind of criticism of these movies. The eagles are not a taxi cab service. They don't care about your problems, really. They'll help out if they have to, but they're not just going to freaking fly you somewhere just because you want to.
You say the word fly, and I immediately think Gandalf when he's on the bridge after the Balrog knocks him down. Fly, you fools! Of course. Yeah. Let's get the eagles. Let's go.
That's what I remember hearing that a few years ago, and I was like, oh, that's a fun like little like idea. But I also think it's just like old English where he's like, run as fast as you can. He's like, what are you doing?
Yes, I know. I just like to poke fun.
I think it's good too. The thing is, they didn't do this in the movies. They did it in one of the games. The eagles can actually talk, and I think it's a good thing they didn't, because it always gets a little weird when you start to have creatures like that that have like a beak and they're supposed to have lips, and you're like, how are you doing?
Yeah, like for me, I don't like that the trees talk.
Oh, yeah.
And the second one.
something to look forward to.
Yeah, like I get why they do, and it all makes sense, and it's whatever. But I feel like I would have rather like they show conversation through action,
Sure.
or some sort of different sound. Like if maybe they moved and groaned, they tear a tree down or chop a tree in half or rip boughs off or something. The tree like groans and moves, and the hobbits that are in the tree like figure out, well, they're upset that they're being killed and yada yada. And then one thing leads to another. I think if they would have, how can you complain about talking trees? Like, that's the craziest thing we've seen in these movies. Well, to a certain extent, I think I would appreciate it slightly more if it was a little more natural.
Maybe. I think Treebeard has a big speaking role in the books, so they were like, we can't get around it.
Yeah, there's no way.
But they did cut Tom Bombadil. Good.
We'll wait till we watch that movie. I'll think about it more then. But
they cut Tom Bombadil, who was like this super magical, very powerful creature who apparently was not ever tempted by the ring. It could use the ring if he wanted to. I was like, good thing they got rid of that guy, because like people would be like, wait a second, who's this guy? And they're like, he's not a big deal, don't worry about it.
It'd be like Captain Marvel shows up, and why don't they just take it to the
just Captain Marvel, please. Just how about you just take the Infinity Gauntlet and just fly just straight up into the sky, and just put it on and make a wish. She probably could have tanked that, thinking about that. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Marvel, you suck.
I love
Holes
you, Marvel.
punched.
I want
it's
to work
over.
For you. I'm gonna help you. We're gonna do great things together. I do want to talk about this though. One thing that you do kind of lose in subsequent movies, and I think is one of the greatest things here. First off, I think this is maybe the most like magical. It kind of reminds me of like the very first Harry Potter films a little, in that it's like, there's magic in this world, and it's interesting, and there's a lot of different places, and it's really cool. But also the dynamic of the Fellowship. Like, you don't really get, like, they kind of, they pair off and kind of do their own little quests, but there's something so great about this group of 9 guys that they get so bonded, and the extended edition even kind of drive that further, and they have other like little side conversations and little one-liners that kind of add on to their characters, and I love it so much. I love watching like they make Boromir super likable to some extent, when he's like fighting Merry and Pippin. He's like, it's kind of fun.
Oh yeah,
and then
sure.
Later on, Gandalf dies, and he's like, give them a moment for pity's sake. And Aragorn's like, we gotta freaking go, man. Like, he's like, Aragorn's like, I'm full leader mode now. But like, they make Boromir really fun, and like, they've got this kind of like racism between like Gimli and Legolas has a little more of it. More so in the extended edition, I like that.
That's funny.
There's like, he has like one line specifically where they're looking for the door into Moria, and Gimli says, "Well, dwarven doors are invisible after they're made because it's like to protect stuff." And Gandalf says something like, "Yeah, well, the problem is with that, like, if you forget where the door is, like you're not gonna be able to find out where your treasures are." And then Legolas just says quietly, "Why am I not surprised?" And I was like, he's like throwing shade. Legolas barely speaks, but like what he does, it's either like, "Hey, there's a new enemy," or he's like, "Hey, dude, you suck." Like, it's like very funny. But I love it. I love the dynamic there, and starting to really like these characters and how they work with each other. Was there anybody in particular that you enjoyed or liked the kind of the relationship of?
I think all great acting, and per character. My favorites, similar to you, I love Gandalf. I think Ian McKellen is excelente.
Perfect.
And right out of the gate too, like no development required.
Yeah.
He is on point right from the start. My other preferred character / actor is most definitely Orlando Bloom as Legolas. To be honest, I feel like, because I'm kind of looking at, okay, this is fresh. This is the start of this whole thing. Who is the most on point right from the first step? And I honestly feel between those two,
really?
They had it. Legolas isn't like, you don't get a lot of speech and whatnot. I think Aragorn with Name again, please. Name line.
Viggo Mortensen.
Vigo, yeah. I think he's right up there too. There's nothing bad to say about any of them. I just think, as far as my preference, obviously Ian McKellen, numero uno, but Legolas, I think, a close second. I think he has some, like, they give him some moments where it's like, how do you say it? Like a more intimate, like, like when he talks about there's a foul whisper on the wind or something when they're getting slammed with the storm up in the mountains, and other little kind of like more nonchalant, normally you wouldn't pick it up moments. So, which I can kind of appreciate. Speaking of, did you notice when they're in? And did I answer the question? I'm sorry, I trail off.
No, you did. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you did.
Let's jump to when they're in the mountains up there for a second. Saruman's putting that, hocus pocus, I'm going to blow you guys off the side of that mountain. So the snow and the rocks and the ice chunks keep falling off the top edge down on the ledge that they're walking on. If you really slowly watch that, really try and soak it in, did you not start to realize that, like, they use, like, it had to have been like a miniature setup? Like, I swear,
like the clip.
This is a slight dig, but it's almost like I'm going back and watching Star Wars New Hope.
Here we go.
The only reason I joke about that is just because of the practicality and how they use, like, miniatures to do certain things, right? I feel like as I watched that, maybe I'm totally wrong, but it was, first of all, it was very practical and real. They kind of slow motion-y it for a second or two. Okay. Like, as the snow falls down on them, it like gets a little weird, but it also totally looks like it's miniature.
So they could have done that there. I will tell you this from the behind the scenes that I've seen. When it shows the actual actors, which obviously that probably wouldn't be a miniature, right?
Yeah.
That was on a soundstage. And apparently it was like, I think they had said it was like at least 70 degrees in there, if not more. And they're like, we all have to pretend we're shivering as they put like this fake snow on us, and we're in like big coats. And we're like covered up to here, with fake snow. Yeah. So that's where they shot a lot of that, was inside for that.
They might have done it on a soundstage, because you do get that feeling. Obviously, you're not on a real side of a cliff or anything. You got to be on something as a base, and that camera's boomed out here, right?
Yeah.
But when they actually do some of the snow falling onto that ledge and stuff, for some reason, I mean, it's one of those two. It might have been the soundstage, and they actually did, like, kind of heave the snow over the edge to fall down on them.
It could have been CG, though.
Without them there, it could have been poor CG, or it was a miniature.
It was at the time. It was the best.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something weird about it. You pick up on it just slightly, and you kind of tell that, like, the actors aren't there when that happens, but they make it look like they are. I don't know. You start to get a little suspicious, I guess I would say, but still, well done. But I really want to know if I'm right, if they used miniature scale stuff in any way there.
Oh, I'm sure, like on the mountain itself, maybe. I think the reason I buy it more is because, like, the shot before that is like all of them on top of like an actual mountain, and there's that whole sequence where Boromir like picks up the ring, and there's like, and they're all kind of like standing on the mountain together, and Aragorn's like grabbing his, like, the hilt of his sword. Like, that is so authentic.
Yeah.
Or at least they did a good job making it feel that way, where it's like, yeah, I buy that they're all standing up here. Like, they're all just kind of like...
Oh, for sure. I mean, that leads up and sets the stage for that next moment when they're up in the, really snowy and getting pummeled. But
which, imagine if they actually tried to film that on, like, the side of a mountain during a storm, like the audio. They'd be like, I don't put mics on them and we'll CG them out, like,
no way.
That. Like, mountain movies, I don't know how they do it. Yeah, that's a good point, though. And I love the whole time, that whole sequence. Gandalf's like, you know what, man? We're going to have to, I guess we're just going to have to go up and over the mountains now, because a bunch of crowboy from Dunlin, those crows were here. They're like, Gap Rohans, it's a lost cause. And he's like, I will do anything to avoid going in that flippin' mine. And then there's like this huge setup of this thing, and they show like the Balrog picture in Saruman's book, and you're like, what the heck?
Yep.
Like, what are you talking about? And just Gandalf like going, all right, let's let the ring bearer decide. And Frodo's like, we're going in the mines, and he's like, so be it. And then when they finally come, like, you hear it coming, and he's just like, so like, just this knowing of like, oh
yeah,
God, he's like, why? He's like, I'd rather die on the side of a mountain, right?
I like Saruman talking about it. He says, you know what they awoke when they dug too deep or whatever,
Dude,
or something
so
or other.
good. Yeah, totally. I just adore that sequence. But the mountain stuff, I think I remember this too. Sean Bean was not a huge fan of helicopters. I'm not sure if that still holds, but like for a lot of these shots, he would actually like climb up the mountains or like climb to a certain portion where he wouldn't have to get flown out there because he really like in his full gear. So he would look more haggard than most people would because he like showed up like, yeah, I just walked, a couple miles and climbed. Like I was like,
wow.
For me, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take the helicopter, but that's again, I don't know. I guess I'm not as intense as he is. But
Weird.
It's interesting stuff that you hear about like that went on there. And sometimes like you really can tell when they're running in like the wild. You're like, and when you see the shots of like the fake, like when you see like Minas Tirith or something, like when Gandalf goes in the very beginning, you see it, which is like a great kind of nod towards Return of the King. But you're like, yeah, that's clearly a fake structure. But like when they're running in like the big open fields and stuff, you're like, no, that's all real. Like you're like,
oh, and you said Sean Bean too. So
yeah.
Boromir.
Yeah, Boromir. Which, by the way, his gauntlets are so cool. And I love that later on you get that one like brief shot of Aragorn putting the gauntlets on and kind of like accepting. He's like, "Yep, I guess I'm with I'm for the race of men now, and I guess stand up for it." It's got kind of like the white tree a little bit on it of Gondor. Like if you
in the early moments, when they introduced him, I was kind of appreciating his look.
Yeah.
His garb is actually probably the coolest of any of them.
It's
or in fact, it is. But
yeah, well, like it's just all of it, like the costume design, like even Gandalf's hat in the beginning, where it kind of swoops back and then kind of goes up to a point, but it's not just like a pure regular wizard's hat. Like it's got this kind of this vibe to it, and you're like, man, just like everything, just so detail oriented. And then it goes into the fact that like each orc is so terrifyingly real. Like those things are so scary.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I like as an actor, like I couldn't imagine it being easier to be like, yeah, that's a real thing. Like if I didn't know that was Dave over there, I'd be like, Dave, get away from me, dude. Like, no, it's me, it's Dave. I'm like, get away from me. I'll stab you. I'll stab you. Like that.
No, it gives you a more real reaction, right?
Yeah, just like it all looks so good. And again, they could have overdone like the ring wraith look, but they didn't. They're just like, they're riders dressed in black. It's cloak. They've got metal greaves and metal boots. That's it. Like, and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you? Mm-hmm. Why change it? You don't need to. Like, oh my gosh, it's just the costume design alone. It's just so.
The more practical and believable, the better. I mean, you make it too outlandish, and people are just like.
Yeah, like even Saruman's staff, they could have gone like crazy with, but you could tell that it was like handmade or something. Like you look at it, and you're like, you can see like there's little imperfections to it, and you're like, yeah, that was somebody made that. Like this wasn't something they were just like, all right, or we'll CGI in something later. By the way, what did you think of the Palantirs? Like the seeing eye thing? Do you like those?
Oh yeah, you shouldn't be looking into these. You don't know; they haven't all been accounted for. You have no clue who else is looking.
Yeah,
right. And those. Really, I guess what makes you bring that up? I guess I don't really care too much.
They play a bigger role later on, so that's what I just thought I'd bring it up. Just interested to know if you thought.
Yeah, forget who's on the other end.
Sauron. He's all like, "Hey, how you doing?" A creepy voice. I'm an eyeball. Remember that part? It's brief.
Later on, in a different.
Yes, but it's in this one too. Like Gandalf puts the cloth back over it, and then he's like, "Oh."
Yeah, and he sees the eye for a second.
Like,
yeah,
oh my God.
Sure.
Which the eye, by the way, I think is such an iconic, like, perfect representation of Sauron. That like you just see it and you're like, even in a half a second, you're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Like,
sure,
like it's just like wreathed in flame. You're like, whoa, that thing is crazy. When you get a good look at it, like with Frodo at the end of the movie, and like they zoom up onto it, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's pretty intense. Yeah, I really dig it. Any other kind of things you want to talk about before we just kind of wrap up here with some of the community's thoughts too? Out of the three, where does it sit for you currently?
Oh, I think the Two Towers is probably the best one. And it's been a while since I've seen them all. It's the first time I've watched Fellowship in probably years. I know I've seen it more than just the first time in theaters. I know I've seen it maybe once or twice after that fact, but I don't know. I feel like I like the action parts of the second one a little more. So I mean, this is like a second. It might even. I don't know. Oh, that's so freaking hard. I can't rank the Lord of the Rings. Shut up, man!
I know.
Don't ask me dumb questions.
I want to see if you can do it. I've got a few notes here. I don't know if you took any notes that you wanted to bring up too. These are just like very small notes. First one, it's always bothered me. You don't have to shoot him. You could stab him though too. If you're Elrond and you're hanging out 3,000 years ago, and Isildur's like, nope, the ring's mine. Just chuck him in. Just chuck him into Mount Doom. Just run up to him, like, throw him in. Just be like,
or if it's
slipped.
If it's like the whether world ends or not, maybe tackle him in, even if it means you too. Yeah, exactly. Just get it done.
Just take him. I was like, why don't you have a bow? Or I think he's got like water magic or just something. Just do something. This is a question I had in the beginning, like especially in the Shire in Hobbiton. Gandalf, is he super fast? Because he, like, in the first time, like, he's in Bilbo's house, like, Bilbo comes back to see him, and Gandalf has, like, made another lap around, and he kind of comes through the kitchen. He's like, nope, just tea is fine. And you're like, okay, maybe.
Oh, yeah, so thought the same thing. And after he disappears and he's already in the house,
like Gandalf, like, just a little thing.
Can you teleport? Why do you have a horse all the time? What's the point?
Use more of that. I like the ring wraith asking for directions. It's kind of funny.
Shire, yeah. I don't mind that. I think that's pretty cool, though.
Well, I like that he has that, but then later on, one of them just straight up murders a dude who has a lantern. Like, he's like, I'm done with this dude. Like,
yeah. I think that was like, hey, we're almost the headless horseman, but way cooler. I don't
we
know.
are a threat. I wish the extended edition had just like a really bloody decapitation. No, I'm kidding. I said wizard fight equals brutal simplicity. Yeah, they didn't. Costumes, makeups are incredible. They make it so hard to like Pippin in this one. He's likable more so, especially in Return of the King. But this movie they make you want to kill him. Like, he's annoying from the get go. He and Mary still like the fireworks. And then he's going around, he's causing little issues here and there, and then it just culminates with the fact that he like kind of feels bad that he like kind of killed Gandalf, which he should. Don't touch stuff, Pip. Like, it's so frustrating. Baldur's not so good.
I mean, after he knocked that suit of armor, that dead body down that well, I probably would have thrown him down too.
Yeah, just chuck him in.
Yep.
I like that Boromir does get redemption. That's kind of a cool moment because like you kind of build to that moment where he's like, he finally loses his mind, and then he starts saying crazy things like Frodo's like going to take the ring to Sauron and stuff, and you're like, and they fleshed out a lot more of that in Two Towers, like kind of who he is, which I think is pretty cool. But it's still really good in this one. Sean Bean does such a good job. But I love that at the end of all this, though, they could have just I don't know exactly why they break up the Fellowship. I think they just start to see that people are kind of falling and like it's not working out, and so that's why like Frodo's like, I'm going alone. Aragorn's like, I get it. He's like, you can go. I understand that you can't really trust anybody right now. So maybe that was the kind of the point of saying like the Fellowship was broken. But I like that they don't just give up. And like the end of this movie, even though it does feel like there's somewhat of an end, there's still that kind of like built-in, baked-in sequel where it's like, we're not going to leave Merry and Pippin to just get straight up murdered. He's like, we're gonna hunt these guys down and we're gonna kill them, which I think is pretty cool. I'm like, yeah. That's cool.
Oh yeah, because at the end, the Uruk-hai mistake those two for the.
Yeah. They say so basically, and maybe Lurtz.
Because how does Saruman tell
Saruman tells Lurtz? He says there's a halfling among them that is carrying something very special, like very precious. He's like, I want him delivered here, unharmed and unspoiled. So I like to think that before they headed out, like Lurtz is like, okay, guys, okay, before we go, man flesh. So just there's gonna be like 4 it's not full halfling, and we'll pick them up, don't kill them, And then we're going to take him back here. And the one guy with the big axe who's about to kill like Merry and Pippin, he just came back from the bathroom or something. He's like, what did I miss? Like, because he's like running in to just murder both of them, which is pretty funny. But so I think that's the reason why. So they take those two and they just take off. They're very susceptible to name calling though. They're just like, hey you over here. And they're all like, there they are. It's the only two. They're like, there was 4 of them, right? They're like, I don't know. I was born a few days ago. I've been running the whole time, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Yeah, man. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And when I was watching, I'm like, I can remember why. Like sometimes your favorite thing for me, I'm like, why is it my favorite thing? Like, does that mean like sometimes I like giving like silver or bronze, like to kind of like, oh, I like it a little more in a weird way. But like this is the standard for me that starts off one of the greatest trilogies of all time. The greatest trilogy of all time. And I still love it. It still holds up today, even with all the little nitpicks we have with it. Oh, by the way, the music is amazing. Howard Shore, I don't know what else he's done, but this is like some of the greatest music in anything ever. Like when he's like, to the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf does that. It's like, bum, ba, ba, da, da, da. Like that is like, every time I hear it, I just want to go like run into battle. Like, I'm like, yes, I don't know what I'm fighting. I'm like, it's just so good. And like, it can be like the lament of Gandalf and like kind of like the sad songs like throughout. Like it's so like it's just perfect. We forgot to mention Arwen. That whole chase sequence, we kind of briefly touched on. That's a really cool sequence. That looks really pretty, and it's all practical, except for the water horses. Like,
yeah, they probably could have done without that little detail, but. You're right, though. I forgot to call that out. I really did appreciate that horse chase scene with all the ring race. I thought that was really, really kind of cool.
Do you like when she shows up at first? She looks kind of like an angel because he's kind of like seeing things for how they really are. Like she's not in that outfit. Like when Frodo sees her, but then like cut back to like she's wearing like her traveling garb because she's like all in white when he sees her at first.
Oh, yeah. I kind of forgot about that. But he's like under the effects of that poison, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool touch.
Yeah, Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler, which is funny. Like her, I was trying to think. Her and Sean Astin. I think Viggo might be too. Are those like the only American actors in these movies? Oh, sorry, Elijah Wood. There's more than I think. I always thought it was just like a full-on like European cast and stuff, but it's not. They've got plenty. I was just wondering about that. And where's Hugo Weaving from? He's great, by the way. Elrond. I think he's from Britain somewhere, British area.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Someone correct.
No doubt.
But anyway, all of them great. Pitch perfect casting. It's hard to find one of them that like they all play their role really well. I know a lot of people complain about Frodo, but I think Elijah Wood plays Frodo the way he should be played. Like he's got a super huge burden, and he's like always like wants to cry because it's like the weight of the world is like around his neck, like it really is. So I think he does it perfectly. I'm like.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel any differently about it. There's nothing to point out that's wrong with the way he played Frodo.
Yeah.
So why would I want it to be different or somebody else to be doing it?
It's good. Also, I love Bilbo. I love Ian Holm. I like that kind of. He's still addicted to the ring, but he's still kind of a nice guy. And I like how he's deciding to leave his home for his whole life, and he's like the way he's gonna leave is just disappear. He's just like, I'm going to go to my 111th birthday, and I'm going to be like, so long, suckers. He's just, whoop. Like, that's his good.
Yeah, and he goes to
Rivendell.
Yeah. Yeah. Why does he go there? And is that where he's going to live out the rest of his days? Or is he just on his way somewhere else? Where is he planning to end it all?
He was going to do that, but then we do get a moment in Return of the King where he goes back to the Shire for a brief moment. For just a little bit, but I think he was planning to just live out his days somewhere else, and he's familiar with the elves from The Hobbit, so he's like, I've already kind of saved the realm once, but this is kind of a bigger deal. So yeah, it's very cool. Everybody's great in this movie. It's hard for me to find something I don't like. That's just me though. Joe, let's just briefly get into this, and then we'll do the community feedback, and we'll wrap it up here today. But let's get into the segment of the show I like to call, you like to call, we both like to call Time Killers. Oh. We did it together. I was waiting for you to do it with me.
I'm sorry.
No, this is beautiful. What have you been killing time with? What games have you been playing? Movies? Besides Lord of the Rings?
Oh, I've been watching the sitcom American Housewife.
And
Stupid. I mean, it's like mind numbing. You don't need to think whatsoever. Nobody important. Anywho,
very talented actors and actresses is what he meant to say. It's got
yeah. I mean, they're good. It's literally just like crap sitcom-y stuff that you watch at the 7 o'clock on the Friday slot kind of a thing. But the funny thing is, the reason I enjoy it is because it's actually comical. Haley thinks it's funny, and she's not always like everything's funny. Okay. We don't always share the same I can watch a few episodes of this and laugh together. Mm-hmm. So we kind of enjoy it that way, and it's not too. We can still just watch a few episodes after dinner and still chat about the day and whatnot and interact while kind of having it on in the background and appreciating it. So it's kind of nice. It's somewhat entertaining if you're just looking to literally kill time and not have to think too hard. Trying to think what else I've been watching. I watched Rise of Skywalker again for the 4th, 5th time.
What, did you buy it?
Yeah, dude, I own it.
Well, I didn't know.
And all the special features.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I haven't watched all the special features.
What if it's just Adam Driver looking at the camera for 3 hours and just talking to you?
No. I mean, I like Adam Driver and all. I just, more send me one of those prop replicas of the helmet and stuff.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anywho. And then, I played a little bit more of Star Wars Battlefront 2, the campaign.
Yeah.
Which I actually enjoy quite a bit. If I've got nothing to do, I got some free time, which I did last Sunday. I literally spent 2-3 hours just playing through the campaign. Wasn't speed running it per se. Some of the actual dogfighting stuff with the spacecraft is actually not as easy as you'd think.
Yeah. It's good. It's good.
But it is. It's really good. I like how it switches characters all the time. It's kind of fun that way. Yeah. I loved being the special forces and Imperial officer.
Dude, yeah, that's
or
great.
Commander. But when they jump the fence to the other side and the rebels, I'm like, man,
yeah, that's
God, we had all the cool stuff, and you just
it's and even at the beginning, you're breaking out and you're just killing a bunch of rebels, and you're like, how are they going to accept her on the team after she's just gone through and murdered a bunch of people? It's just I would rather have the whole game be her for the Empire. I was like, that's so much more compelling.
But they did a good job of it, especially for a video game campaign, of swaying her to that side or how they get to that point.
Yes, it's kind of quick for me, but
it is a little quick, but somewhat viable. But yeah, I really enjoy that. I'd like to get back into that, play some more of the hero matches and whatnot. The whole Battlefield ground war type feel, I'm not quite as into that mode.
Sure.
I think I much more appreciate I'm going to pick, freaking Kylo Ren or Darth Vader. I'm going to go in there swinging my saber and freaking force choking people. I like those a little bit more than any other mode. But that. And then obviously, Jimmy, tell him what else I've been spending a lot of time with.
I want to make a joke about it, but I don't think I should. He's been playing a lot of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and Warzone, and Battlezone, and War Battle, and Zone Defense. And
you name it, I'm playing it. I absolutely love that game. I like it a lot. Warzone, I get tired of Warzone a little bit. I still like playing just the multiplayer, like Ground War, 36 or 40 v40. It's fun. It really is just a good time. And I just love the endless gun combinations, class setups, the gunsmith, the new DLC guns that you can unlock. It's just a freaking blast. The camo grinds, the operators and stuff. The store, I think, is somewhat lackluster. Every once in a while, week to week, you'll get some cool blueprints for gun creations with camos on them. Okay, great. But then there'll be a lull where they're all pretty mediocre. They're for a gun that you would never practically use. But they're improving upon the game. They finally started to crack down on hackers a little bit more. And then, which you don't really experience because it's skill-based matchmaking. So for Warzone, if you jump into a lobby, it's going to try and match you up with players at your certain ability. And apparently it's a somewhat acute range. So a lot of like the better players, like streamers and things of that nature, pro players, they would run into hackers in their Warzone game where like people are just locking on the heads and zip done.
Good.
I say when you can.
That's right. Yeah, bring it down a few notches. All right. Bring it down a few notches.
But I mean, it really started to hurt them for a hot minute there, and within a couple weeks, they finally got their team kind of more on managing that and not cracking down on the hackers because they don't have any. They don't have any anti-cheat software with that game, so
they do now. They probably do.
What?
I said they probably do now.
I don't know. For a while, it was literally just an office of people that would review them, like a team that literally reviewed them case by case.
So we noticed that in your last couple of matches, specifically the last one, you went. I'm not sure how you did this. You went 50 and -1. That means you killed 50 people. Somehow you didn't even die once, but you actually resurrected yourself.
We're born again.
And we think this might be a little bit of an anomaly, but we've looked through your past records, and it seems to be pretty cohesive. So I think you're cheating. So we're going to put you in the cheaters server, where everybody hacks and everybody cheats, and I think everybody's going to really enjoy it. I feel like the cheat I would love to see. And I don't want games to get hacked. I don't think so. But put the cheater server, make that a thing. I also want there to be the whale server, where it's like pay for power. Let the people who want to just spend tons of money be in their own little server where they could just pay for stuff. But I want to see somebody spawn in in the air, and they have like an auto aim on, and they just spin around in circles holding the trigger, and the bullets just go right to each person. And people are spawning and dying. There's like that. See, that's what I would like to see. Because if you're gonna do this, go all the way. No, I'm just kidding. I don't promote cheating or hacking or anything. That's unfortunate, and obviously they'll have to figure that out. You're right, Joe. It's weird for them to get to this point and not have that. Like, it's not like this is their first person shooter, and they're like, we didn't.
Yeah, a free to play battle royale, and you didn't go in day one with an anti-cheat software. Like, are you kidding me?
Like, you've already being free to play, you've just given the hackers one less barrier to jump over. They're like, oh, it's free. They're like, all right, so I don't even have to pay to screw around in this. They're just like, well, just hop on it.
Yeah, exactly. There's literally an online shop you can go and buy the codes or whatever to do this stuff.
To do what stuff?
There's people that make the hacks, and you can buy the package online, and you can go and do it if you have the know-how to actually implement it. But you can go buy that, and everybody's like, why isn't Infinity Ward suing the people that are making the hacks?
Yeah.
Why isn't there a lawsuit in place for that? I don't know. Apparently it's very upfront too. You can go look it up online right now. But
Infinity Ward, listen to me. Take your crazy amounts of money, hire these people, and then have them make a crazy cheater hacker Call of Duty. That's called Call of Duty Hackers, and it's just tons of cheat codes. You get to pick a few cheats when you get into the fight. I think it would be amazing. People would be like, yeah, I love the infinite health cheat code, but it's not as good as the I don't know, the spawn right behind an enemy every time and shoot him in the back of the head cheat code or something like that.
What makes it truly crazy is it's insane hackers with a Z.
With a Z.
With a Z.
Or for Britain and Australia, a Z. There you go, everybody. If you're listening from oh, I can appreciate that. No, I would I would love it. Just hackers with a Z, bro. Yeah. See, I'd be into that game. I'd be like, you got my attention.
Needless to say, I know not a lot of our listening base has viewer base has a affinity for Call of Duty, but man, I can appreciate it. I'm really, really digging it. As far as battle royales go, they've done a great job. An excellent job, in fact. I really appreciate it. So, cool. But anywho, how about yourself, Jimmy? Time killers, what you got?
Thank you. I've been, I like to kill my time in lots of different ways, editing vlogs and stuff. We got another one coming out hopefully soon. It should be soon. It's like an hour and a half. Don't you even worry about it. So if you haven't seen my Disney
additional vlogs, Disney stuff,
yeah, this is the third and final one from California. I did 3 days, so I had Universal and then Disneyland for 2.
So the trilogy comes to an epic end.
An epic end, which is sad because I really wanted Jurassic World to be open when I was at Universal Studios, but they were like down for refurb because I think they're adding more of like the Indominus, because right now I'm pretty sure it's just like a head. Which, Joe, I know we talked about like getting a video sometime of it and just like doing a ride through commentary or just talking about it, which I think would still be really funny because neither of us have been on it. Like I've been on the one in Orlando, but I'd be like, oh yeah, so you can tell like in this sequence that this was not as great as I thought it would be. But
I've seen the ride through on Jurassic World, the updated one, and I can see where they've basically recycled a lot of what was there.
Yeah.
I think as far as what they've added, they've brightened it up and made it more like modern Jurassic World stuff. And like, obviously the audio and everything has changed, but again, they've kind of reused a lot of the same features and just reskinned them slightly to fit. I did notice like the tunnel ride through, they do this tunnel ride through portion where all the walls are, obviously they're using technology more so now, and it's big monitors and it's meant to look like the Mosasaurus is swimming around you eating sharks or whatever, which is cool. But it looks like a good ride, but I don't know. I feel like, man, could they do so much more for something like that? This is a different podcast. I'm done.
We should talk about the ending room. I've heard is really cool. By the way, that Mosasaurus should either be at the very end of the ride, because in the beginning it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, why would you start off and like have a bunch of like, how does that physically work with a big water tank around me, and then I come out of it and it's like, is that water tank still enclosed because there's like the rest of the ride? Whatever. It's a little weird to me. Like I
think it's meant to look like a tube underneath the pool.
But then when you come out of the tube, then you're just like in the open with like the little overhang mountain thing and like a river. And so like, did you run a river through like this kind of like tubular structure thing? Like, I don't know. Not that the Jurassic Park and World engineers have ever thought of safety first. Like, it's usually like the last thing they think of. They're like, well, I don't know what happened.
You mean you don't have a backup generator for the electric fences?
What we're telling you is we're going to pay one guy who's kind of not interested in his job. He's more interested in eating donuts. Watch the most terrifying creature that man has ever created. It's going to be fine. Like, come on. Anyway, sorry. These are good there. So I've been editing those videos, so next one should be out soon. I'd love to know if people like those. It seems like we've gotten some feedback on those, which is great, because if I get comments on any video, I feel like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So we've gotten some people saying they really love it, so thank you for watching. And maybe they're watching this now, and they're like, wait a second, this doesn't have to do with theme parks. Guess what? This channel is everything we want to talk about. All right? Jonathan Davis will be on eventually. No, that would be... Jonathan Davis is the guest next week. No, just be like, so which theme parks do you like, Jonathan Davis? And he'll be like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Okay, that's great. But I've also been playing Divinity Original Sin 2 with my buddy Leo. We're almost at the end of that game, I think. It's been a long time, so we're trying to think of like the next game we could play. Probably hop back into Monster Hunter eventually, because that's a game that obviously, Joe, you have, we could play together. I'm always looking for another co-op game or something, something fresh.
And I think just under a month, Monster Hunter is going to have another title update that apparently is going to be as big as the Safi Jiva stuff, so if not bigger.
That game just keeps giving. I love it. The Safi Jiva grind stuff was a little annoying. I don't like...
I still haven't even fought the damn thing.
It's weird. It's a cool monster. It's very cool. But anyway, so I've been doing that. I've been watching Black Clover. It's anime. That's been really fun. I've been really sucked into that. It's not my favorite anime, but for some reason I just can't stop watching it. And then Joe, everybody who knows me, who knows I love The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, my sister got me into this very short series on Netflix. I've got 2 episodes left, called Love is Blind. It's an incredibly stressful show. Basically, what they did is they took like 10 women and 10 men or something like that, and they brought them to a warehouse, and like, I don't know if they had them live there. They said they were living there. I don't know about that.
Weird.
Put them in these pods or whatever. So they're basically like small solo rooms with like a couch, a table, and stuff. And these pods would like, there's 2 pods that were connected. And so we put a man on one side, a woman on the other side, and they could talk to each other, but they couldn't see each other. So the whole shtick of the show was like to see if you could fall in love with the voice or the emotions of another person, and then like you were supposed to propose to them. So
they just take the physical element right out of it,
exactly.
right?
So what you do is you have a man who proposed to a woman. Typically, they kind of would change it up sometimes, but and they would they might agree to be engaged to each other without having seen each other. And then the next day they would reveal to each other what they looked like. So they would show up, they would open these doors, and they would talk to each other.
I hate that. It's almost like they're trying to say, yeah, physical attraction doesn't matter in a relationship. Like
a lot of the people obviously go in thinking that, but you see that maybe that's not always the case. So that's the first 2 episodes or 2.5 episodes. So that's not the whole show, thankfully. But then they do this thing where it's all right, now we take them as a full group, the ones who actually did get engaged. We take all of them and we bring them to a resort in Mexico. So very Bachelor in Paradise. And we have them, they're all there together and they're going on special dates, but it's kind of sped up. And then we'll have them meet at night and talk to each other. But the problem is, obviously, they've all kind of dated each other more or less a little bit because they kind of date everybody and then you kind of pick the ones you want to see again.
Next thing you know, I did get engaged to him because connection wise, it was great. But this guy, I had a good connection with him and he's way better looking. Next thing you know, they start all flip flopping around and shit falls apart, doesn't it?
They had that with one person, but most of the people stuck together, which is pretty interesting. The real fascinating part for me is when I think they're all from Georgia because this is the way they had it schedule, because I was like, how are they doing this? So then they brought
filmed in Georgia.
They brought them all to Georgia, and they had them living in these apartments that were all connected to each other. But they were going to simulate because you get 4 weeks until you're going to get married. So by this point, it's 2 weeks away. So they have them live together for a couple of weeks. And so they're living there and they work. So they'll go off for the day and they'll work. And then they're meeting each other's parents and stuff like that. But then it was interesting to see them because they didn't have access to their phones and stuff during the pod situation and then the actual the resort situation. But now that that's been introduced back into it and some of the things that these people are stuck on, age, race, and all this other stuff, and just seeing how they interact face to face versus just behind a wall. And it's just, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know how legitimate it is. There's one couple that I feel is perfect for this, and you're oh, these are the people you're rooting for. And both their sets of parents got married within 3 months of meeting each other. So that was it was whoa, this is really weird, but not really that weird because our parents both did this. Yeah, I don't know. I've been watching this. It really stresses me out because some of them fight, and you're whoa. And they also swear a lot because it's Netflix, and they can say whatever they want. And you're
ooh,
okay, all right. But some of them, they start talking about finances and stuff, and that stuff is stressful. And they do not show that on The Bachelor. There isn't one of them was hey, so I have credit card debt, and you're you see the people who don't have that problem. They're what? It's oh my gosh, okay, it's a little rough. Yeah.
Credit card debt, no bueno.
It's 10 episodes long. It's pretty interesting. I have 2 episodes left to go. I guess it's the Bachelor, Bachelorette parties. Again, this all sounds very trashy, but I come from a family, 3 sisters, so
it's entertaining. It's popular for a reason. I'm the same way.
All
I
I'm
get
saying
it.
is one day when I find that special someone, she's going to be so lucky because she's going to be I watched this trashy show, and I'll be I'm all about it. I'll be let's freaking
looking at me, you'd think I'd have a very fine, elegant, acquired taste.
I do
personality, but
I prefer,
and I do like my what do you call it? My shit TV.
My trash TV.
Trash TV.
I have the elegant taste of a chainsaw through the chest cavity of a locust, through the Gears of War franchise. That is what, if you look at me, you're oh, he's very elegant. Look at that man over there. He prefers to stab and to maim. But
clean cut. He
doesn't like a Bachelor television show. Yes, I do. Because it's funny to watch it all just go to hell. Just a little bit of me is Also, I don't know how the pay works on this show. That was a question I had too. Because I know on The Bachelor, they do get paid. Depending on how long they're on there, and then the actual main person gets a ton of money too. So it's I actually just saw one of the finalists from The Bachelor. She was on an ad for something, and I was yep, all of them, a lot of them just go right into advertisement and stuff, and you're that makes sense. Yeah, you know what I mean? But yeah, so that's what I've been watching, besides Fellowship. I'm trying to think of something else. That's for the most part, that's kind of what I've been doing. I also have to finish up another anime for some friends called Witch Hunter Robin that they love. I only watched 2 episodes of it, but it's a little bit older, so it takes me a little more time, especially when I'm involved in another anime. I feel like I'm cheating on it when I watch another one. I'm like, no, it's not. It's like, it's media. I should be able to watch whatever I want to watch. But I'm like, I should watch it on Disney Plus. Oh, I watched Onward. It was good. It was good. I don't know. I don't want to get into it too much. I feel like that's a whole other show, but like, it was fine. I wasn't blown away by it. I thought it was good. So there you go. To anybody, people are like, oh, what do you think of Onward? I'm like, Chris Pratt, actually, I really liked him in that movie. I really did. That's all I'm trying to say. All right, Joe, it's time to move into my personal favorite segment of the show, community feedback.
And questions.
Nailed it. Good job. All right, let's just bring these up over here. I love it when people write in, Joe. It's just, honestly, it just makes me so happy. Makes me so happy. We're going to start with my sister on Discord here because she this is probably for next time. Was it necessary for Sam to overpronounce potatoes? Well, if that was in Fellowship, still a valid question. It's in Two Towers, but maybe we'll circle back to it. I think it's fun. And now when you hear it in Two Towers, you always think of that rap where he's like, potato, potato, boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew. Sorry, just think about that. Anyway. This one comes from Fragadin over here. He says, Fellowship is in my mind, without a doubt, the best film of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, obviously. The pacing and the mix of adventure, glooming terror, the ring wraiths tracking down the hobbits in the beginning really gave you chills and put you on edge. Overall, it just had a great mix of emotions, and it went in so many places. It could be the best movie ever. Fragadin.
The Fellowship, huh?
People love Fellowship, and I get it. I was surprised.
I mean, yeah.
When I was younger, I used to never think Fellowship was the best, but now I'm like, yeah, it's pretty freaking good.
I mean, it's great, and there's some dire moments in there, but I feel like there's one thing I want, and the one thing I want is something more. I mean, it's epic in its own right, but the epicness I'm talking about is Battle of Helm's Deep. I want something like that.
Ironically,
I want something that's going to put the goosebumps on my forearms, you know?
This is the only one where we have Fellowship members die.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. Frodo gets stabbed a lot in these movies, too, by the way. You ever think about that? He gets stabbed like 3 or 4 times.
Frodo, yeah.
He gets stabbed a lot, and he falls off things quite a bit, too. Quite a clumsy hobbit.
2 times, right? 2 times?
He gets
Ring Wraith, Cave Troll.
Cave Troll, and then he gets stuck with Shelob's stinger in Return of the King.
Oh, throughout the whole series. Okay. But twice in the first movie.
Frodo the stab tracker. Let's all keep our eyes on that one.
Yeah. Finish your drink every time Frodo gets stabbed.
This one comes in from Modiaz, though. He says, I love Fellowship, and that's with 3 O's. That's a lot of love. He said, I grew up with the books. When they became films, it was something the entire family was hyped about. I did, however, expect orcs to have red eyes as they do on the old book covers, which I think, Joe, you and I probably... Sounds like with the horse we're okay with, but they all had red eyes. I don't know.
Yeah, but it was kind of a natural look. Now, if they all the orcs had red eyes...
I like the yellow or whatever they've got. I also like the one that kind of stumbles into... Saruman's office. I get him confused with like the first one you see at the Battle of Mount Doom. But anyway, it says, do you think we will see the movies remade in, say, 10 years or so? Or has it become too big of a thing for anyone to dare to touch it again? Thinking as movies tend to go in a bit of circles with new versions. I will say right now,
I know what he's saying.
I get it. I totally get where he's coming from. I don't think anyone will touch this. I just don't. I don't think there's been enough time. And if I'm not saying it's at... I would say this is at the same caliber for me personally as Star Wars, even though I know Star Wars is way bigger. I think you would get more spin-offs like you're going to get the Amazon show. I don't know if they'll ever touch this again, just because there's such a love for it. It brought high fantasy like to the forefront in a way that like Harry Potter obviously did too, but it's different. I just don't think you touch it. There's so much love, and there would be so much cynicism people be like, why would I watch this new one when the old one was better? Like, and The Hobbit's kind of already proven that. Like, The Hobbit made money, but people don't talk about The Hobbit. They're like, I'm just going to go watch Lord of the Rings. Like, I'm glad they made Lord of the Rings first, because they made The Hobbit first like this, and then they tried to make Lord of the Rings.
I don't think they'll ever even think about it until people our age are dead.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they would be like, it's so antiquated where you like watch it and you're like, this doesn't even look like anything, because it still looks like
until an entire generation has like gone.
Yeah.
It came out in 2001, so you'd have to be a millennial. So when the millennials are basically kind of not going to the theaters anymore and they're in their nursing homes, then they'll do another one, because hopefully then they'll get less comparison. But I mean, the thing is that the current ones are going to be passed down through generations. It's one of those things where if you saw it as a kid and you loved it, listen here, son, you're going to sit down, you're going to watch all these today. No lunch. You're watching them. But Dad, it'll be 10:30 by the time they're done. Yeah, and then it's time for bed. No food. You got to watch these movies
right now.
Oh, my poor kids.
Yeah.
But that's how it'll be. It'll kind of be one of those things considered classic, and they hold up well. I don't know how much better we're going to get in the film industry, but they hold up well now. I assume they're going to hold up well for a long time. To redo them might be a bit of a dishonor.
Yeah.
And kind of a way.
Don't touch it. I know a lot of people said this with like Star Wars, that like the prequels kind of ruined the original trilogy. And I don't know if I believe that, but I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and the Hobbit films weren't necessarily at the same caliber to me as the Lord of the Rings. And maybe that's a subjective feeling, but I don't feel like it changes.
I feel the same way.
All it does is when I watch those movies, I think like, oh yeah, they do a lot of nods to Lord of the Rings. There's a few things that are kind of weird. Like, for instance, I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, Joe, Legolas, one of your favorites. His eyes are brown in this movie, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not like
blue?
Stellar bright blue.
Yeah, like I don't know what happened. Like he grew up like 60, 50 years or whatever, and it's like the eyes. Is the light's fading?
That's another problem with that. It's kind of hard to watch him in that movie because it's like that CGI de-aging kind of a thing, and it's like
he's way bulkier. It looks like he looks like a jacked elf.
He is bulkier for sure.
And he also defies all the laws of physics in that one. They're like, all right, remember the shield thing we did in Helm's Deep? What if we have him jumping up rocks? And you're like, and the rocks are on a bridge that were from a tower that collapsed, and they're falling.
Yeah,
and,
and he doesn't notice, like, before the Balrog shows up, he jumps the staircase thing as it's breaking and stuff. When he jumps that, he acts like it was like a big deal, but it's only like a 6-8 foot gap. Yeah. I mean, for him, that should be like taking a step out of the bathroom after taking a shit. Like that shouldn't even be a big deal. But he makes it look like it. And then you go back to there's a little bit of flip flop in there with like what's realistic and what's difficult for. What's difficult for him and what isn't. So
there's even one little bit too, talking about that moment. They're coming down those first set of stairs, and I think Legolas actually slips off one side of the stairs to get onto that next one that's going down. It's so brief, but it's like this little moment where I'm like, I think they added that in. I was like, that's so cool. Which, talking about the realism, that's something we didn't talk about too much in the actual discussion, but I think it's one of the things that makes these movies hold up so well. Is even though there are fantastical moments like the Balrog and the Watcher and things like that, it still feels kind of like this could have happened at some point, like to some degree, where you're like, oh, this is because it's also tangible. Like you look at it and it's like not too fantastical. Like with Harry Potter, you're like, all right, that family walked into a tent, but that tent's the size of like a mansion. You're like, okay. But like in this one, they don't have weird stuff like that as much. Like it feels like
numero uno,
like historical to some fact.
True. And numero uno, the thing that really helps these movies with the practicality is the cannon fodder is real. The orcs are real.
Yeah, they're real. It's all real.
You have so many interactions with them, and they're monstery, but they're all real.
Are real. Agreed. They are real. It's very good. We have one more right in here. This one comes from Bearded Scotsman 86. We love you, Bearded Scotsman. Thank you. He says, I remember having a VHS copy that I recorded from someone's illegal DVD of the film. I would watch it whilst doing homework, and when it finished, rewind it and watch it again. I now own the super quality, long-length Blu-ray version. Really have to set aside time to watch that one. Yeah. Oh, you really have to set aside the time to watch that one. I hear you, man.
God, I can't remember the last time I watched something on a VHS.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I love the thought of him,
what?
just like little bearded Scotsman finishing up homework, or like he's not finished with it, and he's like, oh man, he's going to stop, rewind. It's just like, and he's like, and then it finally finishes like a minute or two later, and he's like, play. It goes back to his homework. Like, I love it. He says, one thing that always got me was it felt like they went into too much effort. For example, all the chainmail was hand sewn. I think it's by 2 guys. It seems overly excessive for something barely anyone will pay much attention to. Maybe that adds to it being a great film. I don't know. What do you guys think on that? Joe, what do you think?
I think you get away with like certain characters, like say if like an orc has mail on of some sort. Not all of them need to have it, only if they're in like frame for too long or something where, you know, somebody's going to be able to appreciate some detail.
Sure.
You know, there's the right places and moments for it. So it counts. But if it, you know, you don't want it to be orc number 30 who's in the 8th row in the back, that won't even really, you'll catch the top of his head.
I think it's mostly the people, the humans who have it, and the elves.
Sure. So if there's any camera time to where you're going to catch a glimpse of it, yes, 100% worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel bad because I think the 2 guys who did it, like you watch the behind the scenes stuff, it looks like they're losing their minds because for like 2 years, that's all they did is just like put freaking chainmail together. I think it really adds to it, and I think it future-proofs the movie in a way that even the greatest technology nowadays cannot. And by that, I mean the CGI of the troll, for instance. Not as good maybe as the Balrog. It's a little different. It doesn't look as good today, or when Legolas jumps on him to kind of do that headshot thing, and like they're trying to figure out how to kill the troll, but it doesn't look as good. But instead of that, like, and going fully authentic, and the weight of it and the movement of it, I think kind of plays in a bigger factor to making it all seem real. And for me, I think, even though it must have driven those 2 guys mad, and there's excessive amounts of detail in these movies, I think I don't know if it's necessary, because I'm sure there are cheaper ways to do it, but I think it just kind of shows a labor of love and passion for this franchise, and all it does is inspire, you know, for me. I'm like, man, there's not like one thing they were like, nah, just whatever, just throw something on there, whatever. It's like, nope, everything is like, we'll just make it just as perfect as we can. Like, we want to prove to the world that we deserve to be here. And if you go back and actually watch this stuff, they used to talk about it as being like the biggest indie film of all time because they didn't have like New Line Cinema sign on until like way late in the game. So like it was a bunch of just people like trying to make this thing like go. And it's like, it's just so cool. Like, I love that type of passion. It's excellent. I love it.
What studio owns Lord of the Rings, or has the
nowadays? It is Warner Brothers, I believe, because they are the ones who made like The Hobbit and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, New Line Cinema was the one who brought the movie to life, and I think helped, like, did most of the bill footing and all that stuff, which is kind of weird because you think of it being such a staple franchise now to some degree, even though it's still, I would say, kind of more niche than something like Star Wars or Harry Potter. Those ones are obviously way bigger, but like back in the day, no one was they're like, Lord of the Rings, like, okay, I don't, like, not that, it's not that big of a deal, like, you know, because people weren't talking about it, because, like, you know, especially around that time when Harry Potter was coming out, it was like, whoa, Harry Potter is like the hotness, like, so yeah, but anyway, I hope Bearded Scotsman, that answers your question. I think it definitely, it adds so much to it. I love that because it just means that, like, they just, again, just back to Boromir, the first time you see him, just like his whole outfit, you're like, they didn't have to do this, but they did. And like, it tells a story. Like, you feel like that character is even more believable besides his great performance. You're like, that's a real person. Like, that's a real character coming to life. Like, good on you. Like, it's just so good. It's so good. I love it. Go on and on and on and on. Anyway, there we go. That's our discussion for Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. Man, heck of a film. we're gonna go through these. It might take a little more time. We might kind of have it interspersed and stuff like this, so I'm not like forcing Joe to sit down and watch 3-hour movies every week. Because he's got Warzone to play. People to shoot.
Put me in, Coach. I'll do it.
I didn't know you rented it. Yeah, I'll send you something.
Yeah, I was looking all over. I was like, none of my streaming services had it.
Netflix just had it.
Yeah, and I even Googled. Yeah, I tried looking it up. I was like, why can't I? And yeah, it's not. I think it was removed in November of 2019 or something like that.
What? I swear it was. I just saw it on there.
Yeah, I don't know. I did the search. I put Lord of the Rings, and it said search is similar to Lord of the Rings or The Fellowship. I'm like,
it's so weird.
Shit.
Yeah, you're like, come on. It's like it knew. I feel like, and there's this other podcast I love watching, Weekly Planet. You should seriously check them out. They're super funny. Their joke over there is that anytime they mention a film is going to be on Netflix, Netflix hears it and immediately takes it off of Netflix. Like, we're gonna have to rent the DVD. Like it's like come on, Netflix, don't do this to me. We have so many streaming services, and you just like sometimes you just want to watch The Mask of Zorro, and it's just not on there for a bit, and then they finally put it on Netflix, and you're like, that's a freaking good movie. Sorry, I watched that recently. It's so good. Anyway, Fellowship of the Ring, thank you. I really, seriously, if you're listening to this right now, please leave a comment. Let us know if you liked it, like this actual video we made here, or what you think of Fellowship. Is it your favorite, your least favorite? Where does it fall? Does it fall in the middle? Who are your favorite characters? And why is it Gandalf? Why is Gandalf the best character? Because he is, man. He even blows his smoke into like a ship.
A sailboat.
It's like, yeah, he just
through.
You're like,
yeah.
Dude. I'd be like, if I were Bilbo, I'd be like, I've been practicing that ring trick for so long, and you just come in here, Mr. Smoke and Fire Wizard, and make that. I'd be like, come on, dude, you're killing me. I'd be like, yeah. I also love how rapidly he ages too. Like he's been gone for a couple of weeks, and you're like, whoa, Bilbo, you're not looking so good. Like Bilbo's like a decrepit old man. Like
because he's away from the ring.
And then he's got that creepy face, which actually isn't CGI. It's like a bunch of different like face models they put together. Oh man, it's the ridiculous amount of detail. I love it so much. Anyway, Joe, thank you for being on, as per always, my friend. I appreciate it.
Always, Bill.
There you go. If you guys ever want to reach
the show, a tip of the hat.
This is a tip of the hat. If you want to reach the show, just type the hashtag Critical Podcast to us on Twitter. I'm at GoCritical or at JimmyGood013. Check us out. Or if you want, you can tweet at Joe, which is at Lever_627. That is Lever, just like Beaver, only with an L. Did you like that?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Jimmy. There you go.
Thank you. And thank you guys just for watching. We really appreciate it. Thanks to Joran Evers, who's done pretty much all the artwork you see here. Thank you to Daleb for our theme music. I love that. Joran, actually, by the way, just came out with a new comic that he's been working on, so please check him out. He's at Naraj28 on Twitter. He's very good. He's very talented. I love him so much. And thank you to all of our patrons who have been supporting us for so long. I've been bad about this, but if you are a $5 patron, you get this podcast like a day early. And then also, we're going to start to mention you guys at the end of our videos here. So hopefully you're seeing that somewhere, like over here or here, or well, it's over there somewhere. So yeah, thank you guys so much for donating and supporting us. And if you want to do so, you can go over to our Patreon and check that out. It'll be linked, so you should be able to find it. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you. Love and hugs during these trying times. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye. There's Joe. We're zooming back in. Nailed it.